My wife stood up at the head of the boardroom table, smiled at me with the warmth of a spring morning, and said, "Caleb, you know I love you. That's why I'm doing what's best for us." And then, floating in the air just beneath her chin in letters the color of fresh blood, I read the truth. The divorce papers are already signed. Your shares are already promised to Brendan. By tonight, you will have nothing. I was the only person in that room who could see those red words. As far as I could tell, I was the only person in the entire world who could see them. 12 executives sat around that obscene slab of black marble, all of them watching me the way a table of wolves watches a lamb that has wandered into the wrong meadow. And every single one of them thought I was about to break. 3 years married into the Thorne family. 3 years of being the live-in son-in-law. The joke. The man who married up. The pretty accessory that Alara Thorne kept around because her dying father had asked her to. 3 years of smiling while grown men in $10,000 suits called me the houseboy to my face and pretended it was affection. And now they had gathered here on a gray Tuesday morning to finish me off in a single clean cut. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly know, was that when I had opened my eyes that morning, the world had changed. I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened to me. I only know that when the maid, sweet old Sophia, brought me my coffee and said, "Good morning, Mr. Stone. You slept well, I hope." A line of crimson text had bloomed under her chin like a bruise made of light. He didn't sleep at all, poor boy. I heard him pacing until 3. That was true, and it was kind. And it was the last kind lie anyone would tell me for a very long time. Because from that moment on, every time a human being opened their mouth and spoke a falsehood, the truth wrote itself in red beneath their face, and only I could read it. Do you understand what that is? In a family of liars, in a company built on lies, in a marriage that I was beginning to suspect had been a lie from the very first day, I had just been handed the only weapon that mattered. So when Alara smiled her spring morning smile and told me she loved me, and the red letters spelled out her betrayal one word at a time, I did not break. I did the last thing any of them expected. I laughed. It started as a small thing, a breath, and then it rolled up out of my chest until I had to put my hand flat on the cold marble to steady myself. And 12 of the most powerful people in the city watched their houseboy laugh at his own execution and had absolutely no idea why. Something funny, Caleb. That was Brendan. Brendan Delgado, Chief Strategy Officer, the golden boy, the man with the jaw you could open envelopes with, and the smile that had talked 3 separate boards into 3 separate fortunes. He leaned back in his chair with the easy confidence of a man who has already won. One arm draped over the empty seat beside him, the seat, I noticed, that was closest to my wife. "We're trying to have a serious conversation about your future," he said it gently, almost warmly, the way you'd speak to a child. And under his chin in red, "Sign, you idiot. Sign before you realize what you're actually worth." Oh, Brendan, that last part was interesting. Before you realize what you're actually worth. I filed it away. I filed everything away now. "You're right," I said, wiping my eye. "Forgive me. Long night. Please continue. You were saying something about my future." Arthur Thorne cleared his throat. Uncle Arthur, IAR younger brother, a soft, round man with a hard, flat stare, the kind of relative every empire keeps in a back room and regrets. He slid a leather folder across the marble toward me with one manicured finger. "Caleb, my boy," he said, "I'll be blunt because I respect you. Red letters. I have never respected anyone in my life. The company is at a delicate moment. The Meridian merger is the most important deal in the history of this family. The banks are watching, the regulators are watching, and frankly, he spread his hands, a gesture of helpless honesty. The optics of the CEO's husband being, well, a person of no particular background, no title, no accomplishments. It's a vulnerability. Our enemies will use it. So, the board has proposed and ERA has agreed that the cleanest path forward is a quiet, generous mutual separation. You sign here. You transfer your nominal shares. They were only ever a gift after all, back into the family trust. And in return, you walk away with $8 million and our eternal gratitude. $8 million. Under his chin, the red text scrolled like a stock ticker. There is number 8 million. The account is a shell. You'll sign, and by the time you find a lawyer, the money will have evaporated into the Meridian escrow, and you'll be suing a corpse. I looked at that number, 8 million, sitting there in the folder in crisp black serif. And then I looked at the red truth floating under Arthur's chin, and I felt something cold and clean settle into my spine. In my old life, my real life, the one I had buried 3 years ago to marry this woman, I had made and lost $8 million before lunch and considered it a slow day. But they didn't know that. Nobody in this room knew that. To them, I was Caleb Stone. Nobody. The houseboy, a man so beneath them that they hadn't even bothered to have me followed. And that, I was beginning to understand, was going to be the most beautiful part. Era, I said. I turned to my wife. I made myself really look at her the way I hadn't let myself look at her in months, because looking at Era Thorne had become a small daily act of self-harm. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and the coldest, a blade of a person, all clean lines and gray eyes, and a mouth that had forgotten how to be soft. When I'd married her, she had cried at the altar. I used to tell myself those tears meant something. Is that what you want? I asked her. A quiet, generous, mutual separation. The room went still and looked at me, and her face did not move. Not one muscle. She was carved out of winter. And she said in a voice like a closing door, "Yes, Caleb. It's what I want." It was always going to end this way. I think honestly we both knew that. Every word a knife. And beneath her chin in red, in letters that trembled slightly, as if the truth itself were struggling to hold still. Don't sign it. Please, God, whatever you do, don't sign it. If you sign it, they win and you die, and I can't stop them. Look at me. Look at me. I have never loved anyone the way I love you, and I am about to lose you to save you, and I can't even tell you why. I stopped breathing. I want you to understand what that moment was. For 3 years, I had believed that my marriage was a beautiful, expensive lie, that tolerated me, that the coldness was real and the warmth had been the performance. I had built an entire private grief on the certainty that the woman I loved did not love me back. And now the universe, or whatever cruel thing had given me these red letters, was showing me that I had gotten it exactly backwards. The coldness was the lie. The coldness was the performance. And somewhere behind that winter face, my wife was screaming at me not to sign. My hand had been drifting toward the pen. I stopped it. I stopped it. And I let it rest flat on the folder. And I felt every eye in the room track the movement, and I smiled again. Not the laugh this time. Something smaller and much more dangerous. You know, I said, I think I will read it first. Arthur's face flickered. Caleb, there's really no need. There's every need, Uncle Arthur. You said it yourself. This is the most important deal in the history of the family. Surely, the most important deal in the history of the family deserves a man who reads the contract. I opened the folder. I didn't actually need to read it, of course. I already knew what it said. The red letters had told me, but I turned the pages slowly, one at a time, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable and then unbearable. And while I turned them, I watched the room over the top of the page. Because here is the thing about being underestimated for 3 years. People stopped guarding their faces around you. To them, I was furniture. And furniture doesn't watch. But I was watching now, and I was reading. And oh, the things people were saying without saying them. Lana Thorne, Ira's younger sister, perched at the far end of the table in a dress that cost more than most people's cars, leaned over to whisper to the woman beside her. And I couldn't hear the whisper, but I didn't need to because under her chin, it wrote itself in red. If he actually reads the whole thing, we'll be here till Christmas. The illiterate little gold digger. Gold digger. That was rich coming from a woman whose entire personality was her father's money. I turned another page. Down the table, the CFO, a nervous man named Hawkins with a comb-over and a wedding ring he kept twisting, was staring at the folder in my hands with an expression I would have called fear if I hadn't known better. And when Arthur glanced at him and asked, "Everything in order, Hawkins?" he said, "Absolutely. All standard language." And under his chin, the red text said, "If he finds the clause on page 11, we are all going to prison." Page 11. I made a note to enjoy page 11. And Brendan. Brendan was watching Era, not me. Brendan had already dismissed me. In Brendan's mind, I was already gone, already erased, a name being deleted from a document. He was watching my wife with the proprietary patience of a man waiting for a package he's already paid for. And when she felt his eyes and turned her head a fraction to meet them, he gave her the smallest smile. And under his chin, the red letters wrote, "Soon, the company, and then her." In that order. She thinks she's using me. They always think that. I turned to page 11. I read page 11 and I understood all at once the full and magnificent shape of the trap they had built for me and the far larger trap they had built without realizing it for themselves. Because page 11 was not really about me at all. Page 11 was where Arthur and Brendan had buried the mechanism that would strip Era of control of Thorn Global the moment the Meridian merger closed. My divorce was just the appetizer. My shares, the nominal gift they wanted back so badly, were the last block of votes standing between Era and a boardroom coup. They needed me gone not because I was a vulnerability. They needed me gone because without knowing it, I had been holding the one card that could save her. And she knew that was why she was begging me in red not to sign. She had walked into this room prepared to sacrifice her marriage to be cruel to me one last time, to let them think she'd sold me out all so that I would sign and walk away safe and clueless while she went down alone to protect me from whatever they were holding over her. My winter wife, my cold, carved screaming wife. 3 years I had misread her. 3 years. Well, I was reading her perfectly now. I closed the folder. I set it down gently, squared its edges against the marble with 2 fingers, and pushed it back across the table toward Arthur. "Thank you," I said. "That was very illuminating." Then I picked up the pen and every person in that room leaned in and Brendan's smile widened. Anne's face finally cracked. Just for an instant. Just enough for me to see the terror underneath. And I clicked it twice and set it down beside the folder without signing a single page. "I'm not going to sign this," I said pleasantly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Caleb." Arthur's voice had lost its softness. "I don't think you understand the position you're in. On the contrary, Uncle Arthur, I understand it better than anyone at this table." I stood. I buttoned my jacket, a cheap jacket, the kind they'd smirked at for 3 years, and I let my eyes travel slowly around the marble slab, from Lana with her whispers, to Hawkins with his prison, to Brendan with his appetite, to Arthur with his shell company, and finally to my wife, my beautiful liar, who was staring at me now with something I had never once seen on her face in 3 years of marriage. Hope. Terrible, fragile, furious hope. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You called this meeting to end me. And instead I think this is going to be the meeting that people point to years from now when they try to figure out the exact moment it all started to go wrong for you. Because you made one mistake this morning, all of you. The same mistake you've been making for 3 years." I walked to the door. I opened it. And then I turned around and gave them the truth. The only true thing anyone had said in that room all morning. "You told me lies," I said to my face, "and you were so sure I couldn't tell." I let the door fall shut behind me on 12 stunned faces, and I walked down that long glass hallway with my heart going like a hammer and a single thought ringing in my skull, clear as a struck bell. They had signed the divorce papers already. They had promised my shares to Brendan already. They thought the game was over. They had no idea it hadn't even started, and that for the first time in 3 years, I was going to stop pretending to be the man they thought I was. My name is Caleb Stone. 3 years ago, I gave up everything. A name, a fortune, a reputation that moved markets and buried it for a woman I thought had stopped loving me. This morning, I learned 2 things. That she never stopped, and that every lie in the world now turns red before my eyes. And I was about to make every single person who built that trap wish with all their rotten little hearts that they had never learned my name. The Thorn estate sat on 11 acres above the river, a white stone monument to a fortune that grandfather had built and her father had multiplied, and for 3 years I had lived in it like a guest who has overstayed a weekend. I drove myself home that afternoon. They had taken the driver away 8 months ago, a small economy of humiliation, and I sat in the car in the circular drive for a long time, engine ticking as it cooled, looking up at the windows and thinking about red letters. By the time I walked through the front door, I had made 3 decisions. The first was that I would not tell anyone about the power. Not yet, not ever, if I could help it. A weapon is only a weapon while your enemy doesn't know you're holding it. The moment they know you can see their lies, they simply stop lying to your face and start lying behind your back. And then you're blind again. The second decision was that I would keep being the houseboy, the smiling, harmless, slightly pathetic houseboy that they had spent 3 years building in their imaginations. It was, I realized, the perfect disguise. They had made it themselves, and they would defend it against all evidence, because people believe what flatters them, and nothing flattered these people more than my smallness. And the third decision, the one that sat heaviest in my chest as I climbed the stairs, was that I was going to find out what they were holding over my wife, and I was going to take it away from them, and I was going to do it without her ever knowing I knew. Because if there was one thing I understood about Olive Thorne after 3 years, it was this. She would rather burn the world down than be pied, and she would rather lose me clean than let me stand in the fire beside her. If I told her I knew, she would push me out to protect me. So, I wouldn't tell her. I would just quietly make it impossible for her to lose. You're home early. Lana was draped across the sofa in the great room, phone in hand, and she said it without looking up in the board draw she reserved for me. How was the big meeting? Did you cry? Under her chin, the red letters formed lazily. Please have cried. Please, I want to hear about it. It's the only interesting thing that's happened all week. It was fine, I said. Productive. She finally glanced at me, and something in my face must have been wrong. Too calm, not broken enough, because a little furrow appeared between her perfect brows. You do know they're getting rid of you, right? Like today? You get that? I get that. Everyone thinks that. Yes, everyone thinks that because it's happening. She sat up, warming to it now, the cruelty coming off her like heat off asphalt. God, your era is going to be free of you, and honestly, it's the best thing that ever. And then in red, a full beat before she said it out loud. I'm going to miss having someone in this house who's nice to me. She blinked as if surprised by her own thought and covered it with a sneer. Whatever. Enjoy your last night. I looked at that red sentence hanging under my furious little sister-in-law's chin. I'm going to miss having someone in this house who's nice to me. And for just a moment, I felt something I had absolutely not expected to feel toward Lana Thorne, which was a flicker of pity. 24 years old, richer than God, and the only person who had ever been kind to her without wanting something was the houseboy she'd spent 3 years mocking. I filed that away, too. You never know which lonely person is going to matter later. Good night, Lana, I said, and I went up to find my wife. Era's study was at the end of the east wing, and the door was open a crack, and I stopped just outside it because I could hear her voice low and clipped on the phone. Not going to happen tonight, she was saying. He didn't sign. No, I don't know why. Because he read it. Brendan, that's why. He actually read the contract, which is more than you did before you put your name on it. A pause. I stood very still in the dark hallway. Don't, she said, and her voice changed on that single word, hardened around something that I now recognized with my new and terrible clarity as fear, wearing the mask of anger. Don't threaten me. I'm handling it. I said, I'm handling it. You'll have the shares. Give me a week. Another pause longer. And then, in a voice I had never heard my wife use, small and flat and defeated, I know what you have. You don't need to remind me what you have. Good night, Brendan. She hung up. I heard the phone set down on the desk, and then I heard something worse. I heard nothing. The specific silence of a person sitting alone in a room, holding themselves very carefully together. And I understood that on the other side of that door, my cold, carved, untouchable wife was allowing herself, for exactly as long as she thought she was unobserved, to fall apart. I could have walked in. Part of me, the part that had loved her stupidly for 3 years, wanted to walk in and put my arms around her and say, I know now. I know it was never true. Tell me who's hurting you, and I will make it stop. But I had made a decision on the stairs. So instead, I knocked twice softly, and I heard the sharp inhale, the scrape of the chair, and by the time I pushed the door open, Era Thorne was reassembled, spine straight, face smooth, gray eyes flat as slate. The winter back in place so completely that if I hadn't heard the crack, I would never have believed there was one. "You didn't sign," she said. It wasn't a question. "No, that was stupid." Red letters blooming under her chin, even as her voice stayed cold. "Thank you. Thank you. Oh God. Thank you." "Probably." I agreed. I came in and sat down in the chair across from her desk, uninvited, which I never did. And I watched a flicker of surprise cross the surface of her control. But I've been stupid about a lot of things for 3 years. I thought maybe it was time to try being stupid in a new direction. She studied me. She was good. She was so good. 3 years of practice at showing me nothing. But I wasn't reading her face anymore. I was reading the red truth under it. And it was like being handed subtitles to a film I'd been watching in a language I didn't speak. "Caleb," she said, "I need you to understand something, and I need you to actually hear it, because I'm only going to be able to say it once. Red, please don't make this harder. Please just leave. If you stay, you'll die, and it'll be my fault like everything else." "I'm listening." I said, "This marriage is over. It's been over for a long time. I know you. I know you thought there was something here, and I let you think that, and that was cruel of me, and I'm sorry." Her voice didn't waver. Not once. It was the most extraordinary performance I have ever witnessed. And I have sat across the table from men lying about billions. "You need to sign the papers. Take the money. Leave the city. Start over somewhere I'm not. It's the only way this ends without you getting hurt." And under her chin the whole time in red one long, unbroken cry. "I love you. I love you. I love you. I have loved you since the day you gave up everything to marry a woman you barely knew because my father asked you to. And I have spent 3 years being cruel to you so that when they finally came for me, you'd be far enough away to survive it. And I would rather you hate me alive than love me and go down with me. So please, Caleb, please be smart for once in your life and run." I looked at her. I let the silence sit, and then I did something I want you to understand I chose very carefully because it was the first real move in the long game I had decided to play. I let her win. "Okay," I said quietly. I let my shoulders drop. I let my face do exactly what a heartbroken man's face does. "Okay, you're right. Yeah, I'll think about the papers." The red letters under her chin stuttered, flickered, and then wrote something that nearly broke my resolve on the spot. "No, don't agree. I don't want you to agree. God help me. I wanted you to fight. That's the thing nobody tells you about being able to see the truth. Sometimes the truth is that a person is begging you in the same breath to leave and to stay, and there is no clean answer, and you have to choose which lie to honor. I honored the one that kept her alive. "I'll think about it," I said again, and I stood and I went to the door, and I did not look back at her because I knew if I saw the red letters one more time, I would ruin everything. "Good night." I closed the door on my wife for what she believed was the last real conversation of our marriage, and I stood in the dark hallway with my hands shaking, and I made her a promise she would never hear. "I'm not going to run," I told her silently, through two in of oak. "I'm going to take him apart. I'm going to take all of them apart so gently and so completely that by the time you understand what's happening, it'll already be over and you'll be free. And I will never once make you say thank you." Then I went to my room and I opened my laptop and I logged into an account I had not touched in 3 years. An account under a name that 6 central banks and about 40 hedge funds still whispered with something close to fear. And I started very quietly to wake Orion up. Orion did not come back all at once. That would have been a mistake. A name like that reappearing in the market after 3 years of silence is a flare in a dark sky. And I did not want flares yet. I wanted a whisper. So, over the next 2 days, while I played the quiet, defeated houseboy, while I let Arthur's lawyer leave 3 voicemails about finalizing, while I let Lana roll her eyes at me over breakfast, while I let avoid my eyes across the vast, cold spaces of that house, I did what I had once been the best in the world at doing. I read. I read Thorn Global's public filings, its analyst reports, its bond prospectuses, and I read them the way a doctor reads an X-ray. And what I saw made my blood run cold because the picture the numbers painted was of a company that was not merging with Meridian at all. It was being hollowed out into it. The Meridian merger was structured so that once it closed, control of Thorn's crown jewel assets, the logistics network, the port contracts, the thing the old man had spent 40 years building, would pass into a holding company that Arthur and Brendan controlled through a chain of shells so elegant it was almost beautiful. Era would be left as CEO of a gutted brand, a queen of an empty castle. And my shares, my nominal gift, were the last vote standing between them and the day the merger closed, which meant they didn't have a week to get rid of me. They had until the shareholder vote, 9 days. I was still sitting with that number when Sophia knocked and told me that Madame Era wished to see me in the front hall. And when I came down the stairs, Era was standing there in a charcoal suit that made her look like the blade she was. And she said without preamble, in the flat voice she used for me in front of the staff, "Put on a suit, the good one. You're coming to the Owens dinner." And under her chin in red, "I need eyes in that room I can trust, and God help me. You're the only person left in my life I trust." "Why?" I asked. "Because the houseboy would ask why." "Because," she said coldly, "it looks better to have a husband on my arm while the papers aren't signed yet." Optics, try not to embarrass me. Red, because I can't do this alone tonight, and I'm too proud to say it, and you're the only one who's never once let me fall. "Of course," I said mildly. "Wouldn't want to embarrass you." The Owens dinner was the kind of event where $100 million can change hands between the appetizer and the entree, and no one raises their voice above a murmur. Victor Owens owned the shipping terminals that Thorne's whole logistics network depended on, and his contract was up for renewal, and everyone in that candlelit room understood that whoever controlled the Owens terminals controlled the choke point of the entire Meridian deal. Brendan was already there when we arrived, of course, gliding through the crowd in a tuxedo that fit him like an apology. And when he saw Era, he lit up. And when he saw me on her arm, a muscle in his jaw twitched, and under his chin, the red letters said, "Why is the corpse still walking?" I gave him my warmest, emptiest houseboy smile. We were seated at Owens's own table, and I did what furniture does. I sat quietly. I thanked the server. I let the conversation flow over me, and I watched. God, I watched. Because a dinner like that, to a man who can see every lie, is not a dinner. It is a symphony. Victor Owens, 70 years old, silver-haired, genial, telling what an honor it was to have worked with the Thorne family for 30 years, read, "I'm selling to Meridian directly next month. I've already shaken hands on it. This dinner is a courtesy to a dead relationship." Brendan leaning in, charming, assuring Owens that the Thorne-Meridian partnership would only mean more volume through his terminals. Read, "Once we close, we're moving everything to the Guangzhou route, and your terminals are worthless, old man. Enjoy your last good year." Era, poised, gracious, saying she was confident the two families could find terms that worked for everyone. Read, "I know he's already selling to Meridian. I can see it in his face. I'm going to lose the terminals, and when I lose the terminals, I lose the leverage. And when I lose the leverage, they take everything. I have nothing to offer him. I have nothing left." And there it was, my wife drowning at a candle-lit table, smiling so that no one would see the water close over her head. I could have stayed furniture. It would have been safer. But I had made a promise through 2 Inn of Oak, and this was the first chance to keep it. And so I did something the houseboy had never once done in 3 years. I spoke. "Mr. Owens," I said. The table turned to me with the mild surprise of people startled by a talking chair. Brendan's eyes narrowed. Era went very still, and under her chin flared a single red word. "Don't." "I'm sorry," I said. "I know I'm just the husband. I'm sure I'm out of my depth here, but I was reading about the new emissions regulations coming into the northern ports next year, the ones that take effect in 14 months, and I couldn't help wondering." I turned to Owens with the open, harmless curiosity of a man who reads too much and understands too little. "Your terminals are all compliant already, aren't they?" Because I was under the impression that Meridian's northern routes aren't, and that retrofitting them is going to cost somewhere north of $400 million, and that any partner routing through non-compliant terminals after the deadline inherits the liability. But I'm sure Meridian's people have that handled. They must have mentioned it when they shook your hand. The table was silent. I watched the red letters die under Victor Owens's chin because I had just said something that was completely true and that he had not known. And you cannot lie your way over a truth that's landed in your own lap. Owen set down his fork. For 100 million, he said slowly. That's where did you read that? Public docket, I said, shrugging the picture of a man in over his head. Anyone can. I have a lot of free time being the husband. Beside me, I felt rather than saw IAR stillness change its character from drowning to something else, something sharpening. And Brendan leaned forward with his politician's smile and said smoothly, Caleb, I don't think anyone wants to bore Gerald with regulatory minutiae over dinner. And under his chin, the red screamed, how does he know about the emissions liability? Nobody knows about the emissions liability. We buried that in the Meridian due diligence. You're right. Of course, I said, retreating instantly back into smallness. Sorry, I'll let the grown-ups talk. But the thing was already done because Victor Owens was 70 years old and had not built a shipping empire by ignoring the words $400 million in liability. And for the rest of that dinner, I watched him quietly recalculate, watched the red lines under his chin get shorter and more careful, watched him look at Brendan with a new and cautious coolness. And when we stood to leave, old Owens took his hand in both of his and said, You know, my dear, I think there's more life in the old Thorn partnership than I'd given it credit for. Let's you and I have lunch, just the two of us. Next week, red under his chin, warm and true and unhidden for the first time all night. Meridian didn't tell me about the liability. The Thorn boy did. That tells me everything I need to know about who to trust. In the car on the way home, Era did not speak for a long time. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and her face turned to the window, and the city lights slid across the glass. And finally, without turning, she said in a voice scraped down to almost nothing, How did you know about the emissions liability? I read a lot, I said. Caleb, it's public, Era. It's all public if you know where to look. I just had time to look. Silence. Then still to the window, so quietly I almost missed it. That was the whole deal. That was the choke point. He was going to sell to Meridian, and I was going to lose the terminals, and I did not know how I was going to survive the week. And under her chin in red where she thought no one could ever see. You saved me. You have no idea what you just did. You just saved me, and you don't even know it. And you're going to sign those papers and leave and never know that you saved my life tonight. I looked at that red confession glowing in the dark of the car, and I had never in my life wanted so badly to say 4 words. I know. I'm here. Instead, I said, I'm glad I could help with the optics. And I watched her flinch at the word, and I turned to my own window so she wouldn't see my face. And we rode the rest of the way home in a silence that was for the first time in 3 years not empty at all. The next morning, I had breakfast with the only friend I had left in the world, and I watched him betray me in real time, one red letter at a time. And I have to tell you, it was almost restful. His name was Justin Lee. We'd known each other since college, back before I was Orion, and after I stopped being Orion, the one person from my old life who'd stayed in touch after I disappeared into the Thorn marriage. For 3 years, Justin had been my confidant, the guy I got coffee with when the house got too cold, the guy I complained to about Brendan and Arthur and the whole gilded circus. If you had asked me a week ago to name one person who was truly on my side, I'd have said Justin without hesitating. So, you didn't sign? Justin leaned across the diner table, eyes wide, all sympathy. Man, Caleb, I'm proud of you. Seriously, it's about time you stood up to those people. Red under his chin. Brendan's going to pay double if I can find out why he didn't sign. I kept my face soft. I kept my hands around my coffee cup. Inside, something that had been warm for 11 years quietly turned to stone. It felt good, I said. Honestly, I don't know what came over me. What are you going to do now? You got a plan? Red, tell me the plan. Tell me the plan. He wants to know if you have a plan. And that was the moment. Sitting in that cheap diner across from a man I had trusted for a third of my life, that I stopped grieving the old world and started using the new one because Justin had just handed me something more valuable than a friend. He'd handed me a pipe, a direct, trusted line running straight from my mouth to Brendan's ear. And unlike Brendan, I knew the pipe was there. You don't seal a leak like that. You feed it. Honestly, I said, leaning in like a man confessing. I'm scared, Justin. I don't have a plan. I've got nothing. I think I'm going to sign. I just wanted a few days to keep my dignity, you know? But those shares, that money, I can't fight the stirrings. I'm going to take the 8 million and disappear probably by the end of the week. Don't tell anyone, okay? I don't want them thinking they beat me. Justin's face flooded with warm, false relief. Of course, man. Of course. That's the smart move. Red. Perfect. Perfect. He's giving up. Brendan's going to be so happy. This is worth at least 20 grand. You're a good friend, Justin, I said, and I smiled and I meant every word of the lie. Because there is a particular pleasure in telling a liar the truth about himself in a language he can't hear. I don't know what I'd do without you. I paid for breakfast. I always paid. As I walked out, I did the math, and it was lovely. Brendan would hear within the hour that I was broken and running. He would relax. A relaxed enemy is a careless enemy, and a careless enemy stops watching the exits. Let him think the corpse was crawling off to die. It would give me room to work. Lana caught me when I got home because Lana was always home, drifting through those enormous rooms like a beautiful ghost with a phone. You look weirdly happy for a man whose life is over, she said, blocking the stairs. Red, something's different about him. He's been different for days. What is it? Just made peace with things, I said. Uh-huh. She tilted her head, and for a second the boredom slipped, and something almost sharp looked out at me. You know Brendan's already redecorating your Andera's suite in his head, right? He asked me last week what her favorite flowers are. Red. I told him the wrong ones on purpose because he creeps me out, but I'm not going to tell you that. I looked at that red sentence. I told him the wrong ones on purpose because he creeps me out, and I made a decision about Lana Thorne that would matter enormously later, though I didn't know how much yet. I decided she wasn't the enemy. She was just a lonely girl who'd been handed a script by cruel people and had never been given a reason to go off it. So, I gave her one. Lana, I said quietly, dropping the houseboy voice for the first time in 3 years, just for a moment, just for her. Can I tell you something, and you don't have to do anything with it? She blinked, startled by the change. Okay, Brendan doesn't want Era. He wants what she controls, and she comes attached to it. And when he's done getting it, he'll discard her the way he'd discard anyone. And you're a thorn, too. Which means when the music stops, you're attached to it as well. I let that sit. You don't have to believe me, but when things get strange in this house over the next couple weeks, and they will, I want you to remember that the houseboy was the one who told you the truth. And I walked past her up the stairs, and behind me under her chin, though she said nothing at all, the red letters wrote slowly. He's never talked to me like I was a person before. One seed. You never know which lonely person is going to matter later. That night, I found page 11. Not the copy in Arthur's folder. The real one, the operative one, buried in the merger's governing documents that I pulled as Orion through a data room. I technically had no right to be inside and technically had never left because 3 years ago, I had helped structure a deal for the very bank now advising Meridian, and nobody had ever revoked my ghost credentials. And there it was, a single subordinated clause, 40 words long that did exactly what I'd suspected and worse. On the day the merger closed, an automatic conversion would trigger. A block of preferred shares held in an Arthur-controlled trust would convert to a controlling voting interest, but only if the total unaffiliated common float fell below 15% on the record date. Right now, it was sitting at 19. My shares were 4 of those percent. Take my 4 away, and the float dropped to 15, and the trap sprang. And Arthur and Brendan woke up owning the choke point of an empire. That was why they needed my shares, not to save $8 million, to cross a line in a spreadsheet that no one but the architects even knew was there. And the beauty of it, the thing that made me sit back in my chair in the dark and actually laugh out loud alone for the second time in a week, was that the clause cut both ways. It didn't say the float had to fall. It just measured the float on the record date, which meant if the float went up instead of down, if some anonymous party were to quietly acquire, say, another 5% of Thorn Common on the open market and simply hold it, then no matter what happened to my shares, the float would stay above 15 and the conversion would never trigger and the trap would sit there in the documents armed and useless forever. 5% of Thorn Global on the open market without moving the price enough to spook anyone, without a single name attached that could be traced back to a houseboy. That was a hard trade. That was a trade that would have made me sweat even in my Orion days. It was also, I realized, exactly the kind of trade I had once been the best in the world at. I cracked my knuckles, and I opened 6 brokerage windows across 4 jurisdictions, and I started to build the position that was going to quietly strangle their coup in its cradle. Small lots, patient bids spread across days and desks and shell entities so that from the outside it would look like nothing, like noise, like ordinary market breathing. And it would have stayed invisible, too, if it hadn't been for the fact that somebody else was watching that stock very, very closely. Because at 11:40 that night, while I was 3% into my quiet accumulation, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. And when I answered, a man's voice said low and shaking, "Mr. Stone, Caleb Stone, it's Edwin Hawkins from the company, the CFO. I'm outside your gate. Please, I need to talk to you, and it can't wait until morning, and it can't be on a phone. Somebody's buying the stock. Somebody's onto us. And if I don't talk to someone I can trust, I think they're going to make me the one who goes to prison for all of it." I looked out the window. Down at the end of the long, dark drive, past the gate, a single pair of headlights sat idling in the rain. The CFO of Thorn Global, terrified at midnight, certain that some unknown predator had found the trap in the documents, not knowing that the predator was sitting in an upstairs window of the house he'd parked in front of, wearing a bathrobe, holding a cup of cold tea, and beginning very slowly to smile. I met Edwin Hawkins in the pool house because the pool house had no cameras. I knew every camera on that estate, another small gift of 3 years of being ignored. And I made him a cup of tea with my own hands and watched him wrap his fingers around it like a man clinging to the last warm object on earth. He was 61 years old. He had been the CFO of Thorn Global for 19 years. And he was, I understood within about 90 seconds, a fundamentally decent man who had been slowly, patiently drowned. "I didn't want any of it," he said. His voice kept cracking. "You have to believe me, Mr. Stone. When Robert was alive, your father-in-law, it was a clean company. It was a good company. And then Robert died, and Arthur moved in, and the things they started asking me to sign." He stopped, red under his chin, steady and true. "I am so tired of being afraid. I have been afraid for 3 years. Edwin," I said gently, "what do they have on you?" He flinched. What do they have on you?" He told me. 2 years ago, Arthur had directed him to move $40 million through one of the shell entities, the same lovely chain of shells I'd been admiring, and structured it so that on paper, on the documents, it looked like Edwin Hawkins had embezzled it. The money had come back. It always came back. That wasn't the point. The point was the paper. Arthur had built a version of reality, notarized and time-stamped, and sitting in a safe in which Edwin Hawkins was a thief. And every month since that safe had been the leash around Edwin's neck. "Sign here. Approve this. Look the other way. Or we hand the paper to the regulators, and you spend your retirement in a federal prison and your grandchildren read about it online. And now somebody's buying the stock," he whispered. "Somebody nobody can identify. Arthur as I've never seen him like this. He thinks it's a raider. He thinks Meridian's double-crossing him. He's paranoid. He's talking about accelerating the vote. And when Arthur gets scared, he starts looking for somebody to pin things on. And I am always the one he pins things on. And I can't, Mr. Stone. I have grandchildren. I can't go to prison for that man. And you're the only person left who ever." His voice broke completely. "Your father-in-law was kind to me. You're the only one who has his eyes." I let him cry. It cost him something enormous to cry in front of the house boy, and I let him have it. And while he wept, I made a series of very fast calculations, because a frightened man, who has just handed you the truth, is the most valuable and most dangerous thing in the world. Valuable because Edwin Hawkins knew where every body in Thorn Global was buried. He dug half the graves himself at gunpoint. Dangerous because a frightened man will betray you the instant he becomes more frightened of you than of your enemy. So I did not threaten him. That's what Arthur would have done. And Arthur's whole empire was built on frightened men. And frightened men, I was about to demonstrate, are a foundation of sand. Edwin, I said when he'd wound down, I'm going to tell you 3 things, and every one of them is true. And I think after 3 years of being lied to, you'll be able to feel that they're true. He looked up. First, you are not going to prison. Not for their money, not for their paper, not ever. I give you my word, and my word is worth more than you currently understand. Second, the person buying the stock is not a raider, and it is not Meridian, and it is not an enemy of this company. It is a friend of this company, and it is the best thing that has happened to Thorn Global since Robert died. And one day when this is over, I'll tell you who it is, and you're going to laugh. And third, I leaned forward. The safe, the paper with your name on it. I'm going to take it away from him. I'm going to reach into the one thing Arthur Thorn thinks makes him untouchable, and I'm going to take it out of his hands, and I'm going to hand it to you, and you're going to burn it in your own fireplace. Do you believe me? He stared at me. And here is the thing about telling a drowning man the truth when he has spent 3 years breathing lies. He knows. Some animal part of him knows. Yes, Edwin Hawkins whispered. God, help me. I do. I don't know why, but I do. Good, I said. Then here's what you're going to do. Nothing. You're going to go home, and tomorrow you're going to walk into that building and be exactly as frightened and obedient as you've always been. You're going to approve whatever they put in front of you. You're going to tell Arthur, if he asks, that you have no idea who's buying the stock and that you're terrified. All of that will be easy because all of it is true. The only thing that changes starting tonight is that when they hand you a document, you're going to send me a copy first. That's all. You keep being their frightened man. You just quietly become my honest one. He sat down the tea. Something in his spine had changed. Not much, but some small structural thing. The difference between a man who is falling and a man who is found in the dark one solid ledge. Robert used to say, he told me standing, that the whole company would live or die on whether one honest person showed up at the right moment, red under his chin, clear as a bell. I think you might be the moment he meant. When he gone, I stood alone in the pool house for a long time, listening to the rain, and I thought about Robert Thorn, my father-in-law, a man I had met exactly 4 times before I married his daughter. A man who had summoned me out of my Orion life with a single handwritten letter. A man who had looked at me across a hospital room with tubes in his arm and said, Caleb, I'm dying and my brother is going to try to take everything, and my daughter is going to be alone, and I need one person in that house whose loyalty was never for sale. Marry her. Guard her. Never tell her I asked you to. She'd never forgive being managed, not even by me, not even from the grave. Give her the 4% and let them think it's a gift. And when the wolves come, be the thing they never counted on. I had said yes to a dying man for reasons I still didn't fully understand. Something about the old world being hollow, something about wanting just once to protect a person instead of a portfolio. I had not expected to fall in love with the winter I was assigned to guard. That had not been in the letter. I was still standing there when the call came at 7 the next morning, and it was not from Era, and not from Hawkins, and not from Justin. The leak. It was from a landline, an old one, a number I had seen exactly twice in 3 years. And when I answered, a voice like gravel rolled down a well said, Boy, it's Edgar Thorn, Era's grandfather. You'll remember I'm the one who wasn't at your wedding. I remember, I said. Edgar Thorn, 88 years old. The founder, the man who had built the whole empire out of one leased freighter in 1961, and had for the last decade sat up in his estate on the North Bluff like a retired god, refusing to die, refusing to intervene, watching his sons and grandchildren circle the carcass of what he'd built, and saying nothing. He had not come to my wedding. He had not spoken 10 words to me in 3 years. My driver will be at your gate in 40 minutes. The old man said, You'll come alone. You won't tell Era, and you won't tell that soft-handed snake my son sends to do his lying for him. A pause, and something dry and amused crept into the gravel. I hear you didn't sign your papers. I hear you read the contract first. Nobody in this family has read a contract in 20 years. I find that very interesting, boy. I find that so interesting that I've decided after 3 years to have a look at you. Click. He was gone. And I stood there holding the phone 40 minutes from a meeting with the one man in the entire Thorn Empire whose logs I very much wanted to read, and the one man I suspected who had lived long enough and buried enough people to have learned the terrifying art of telling no lies at all. They drove me north, up along the bluff where the old money kept its distance from the new, to a house that was somehow both grander and plainer than the Thorne estate. No white columns, no fountains, just a low fortress of gray stone that looked like it had grown out of the cliff and intended to outlast it. Edgar Thorne was waiting on a stone terrace over the sea, wrapped in a blanket despite the sun, and he did not stand when I came out, and he did not offer his hand. He just looked at me with eyes the color of the water below, pale and cold and absolutely clear, and he said, "Sit. You want coffee? Isabel will bring it whether you want it or not." I sat. Isabel brought coffee, and for the first time since the red letters had come to me, I sat across from a human being who spoke at length and produced no red at all. It was the strangest sensation. Edgar Thorne talked for 10 minutes about the sea, about his dead son, Robert, about the freighter he'd leased in 1961 with money he didn't have. And beneath his chin, there was nothing. No crimson truth bleeding out from under the words. Because the old man was not lying. Not once. Not a courtesy. Not a softening. Not a single one of the small oils that let ordinary people slide past each other. He said exactly what he meant. And he meant exactly what he said. And I realized I was in the presence of the rarest and most dangerous kind of person alive. One who had lived long enough to stop being afraid of the truth. My weapon was useless here. Here I was just a man sitting across from a much older and much smarter man with nothing between us, but what I actually was. "You gave up a name to marry my granddaughter," Edgar said, setting down his cup. It was not a question. My chest went tight. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't." The old man's mouth twitched. "You're good at it. The small harmless act. I watched you do it at the wedding for 6 minutes through a pair of binoculars from that hill over there, and I nearly believed it. And I don't believe anything. But I'm 88, boy. I've hired 10,000 men. I know the difference between a small man and a large man doing a small man's voice. My son didn't pull a nobody out of a crowd and beg him from a hospital bed to marry his daughter. Robert didn't beg in his whole life. He begged one time at the end. And I've been sitting up here for 3 years wondering what could possibly have been worth it. And then last week, a nobody houseboy read a contract at a table full of sharks and refused to sign. And this week, somebody nobody can name started quietly buying up my company 4,000 shares at a time in a pattern so patient and so clean that it took my old broker 2 days to even see it. And I thought, he leaned forward and the pale eyes pinned me like a moth. I thought, well, there he is. There's what Robert paid for. I said nothing. I had learned in the old life that when a smarter man is walking toward the truth, silence is the only card that doesn't lose. Edgar watched me not answer, and he smiled, a thin, dry crack in that ancient face. And he did not press. "I won't ask you to confirm it," he said. "I don't care what your name used to be. Names are luggage. I care about one thing only. The same one thing I've cared about since 1961. Who is strong enough to hold what I built? My son Robert was strong, and he died. My son Arthur is weak and cruel, which is the worst combination, a jackal that thinks it's a lion. My granddaughter, and here for the first time something moved in the old man's face. Something that was almost tenderness and almost grief. My granddaughter is the strongest of all of them, and she is going to lose everything because she spent 3 years so busy building a wall that no one could climb that she forgot to leave herself a door. She won't ask for help. She'd rather go down alone with her spine straight than be saved on her knees. You know this, you married it. I know it, I said quietly. It was the first true thing I'd let him have. So, Edgar sat back. Here is what I'm offering you, boy. And I'll only offer it once. And I'll offer it plainly because I don't do it any other way. I have never once interfered in the war between my children. I let Robert and Arthur fight because a company should belong to whoever can hold it. And I'll be damned before I hand mine to whichever grandchild whines loudest. I have a block of shares, my founder's shares, the original stock, enough to settle any vote in this family stone dead. And for 10 years I have kept them in a drawer and let the wolves wonder. I will not give them to you. I will not give them to Era. But he raised one finger, knotted as old rope. If you can walk into that shareholder vote and hold the line without me, if you can protect her with your own two hands and whatever it is you really are, then at the moment it matters when the whole thing hangs on one ballot, I will cast mine with yours. Not before. I need to see it. I need to see whether Robert bought a guardian or just an expensive coward in a cheap suit. Fail, and I keep my shares in the drawer, and I let Arthur have the ruin he's earned because a thing that can't defend itself doesn't deserve to be defended. Succeed, and you'll find out that the old man on the bluff was never as retired as everyone hoped. He held out his hand, then not to shake, but palm up waiting. And I understood I was meant to put something in it, some token, some agreement, and I had nothing. So, I gave him the only thing I had, which was the truth. The whole dangerous truth spoken out loud for the first time in 3 years to the one man I was certain could keep it. My name was Orion, I said. The shares moving through the market are mine. I'm 5% in, and I'm going to keep buying until the float can't fall low enough to trigger the conversion in the merger documents. And then I'm going to take Arthur's leverage away from him, one piece at a time. And then I'm going to walk into that vote, and I'm going to break him in front of the whole board. And your granddaughter is never going to know I did any of it, because the day she finds out she was guarded is the day she'll never forgive either of us. Silence. The sea moved below us. And Edgar Thorne, 88 years old, founder, retired god, a man I had watched produce not one red letter in 20 minutes of talking, looked at me for a long, long moment, and then he closed his knotted hand around nothing, around the shape of what I just handed him, and he began very softly to laugh. Orion, he wheezed. Robert, you magnificent old thief. You didn't hire a bodyguard. You bought her a Titan and dressed him as a houseboy. He wiped his eye. Oh, I'm going to enjoy the next 5 days more than I've enjoyed anything since Reagan. 5 days. The laughter stopped. The pale eyes sharpened. You don't know. Of course you don't. Arthur only decided this morning he's scared. The buying's got him scared. Edgar leaned in, and for the first time all morning, there was something almost like sympathy in that granite face, which frightened me more than anything he'd said. The votes moved, boy. He's pulling every string he has with the board and the banks. The shareholder meeting isn't in 9 days anymore. It's in 5, which means whatever Titan's work you thought you had 2 weeks to do, you've got until Friday. And your wife doesn't know yet either. Arthur is going to tell her tonight at the Meridian Gala in front of 500 people when she can make a scene. He picked his coffee back up, calm as the sea, and delivered the last of it like a man commenting on the weather. He is going to announce the accelerated vote and the merger timeline. And then this is the part I do worry about in your shoes. He is going to have that soft-handed snake stand up beside her and toast the future of the family so that every camera in the room captures Thorne smiling next to Brendan Delgado on the night her company died. They not just going to take it from her boy. They going to make her way for the photographers while they do it. He looked at me over the rim of the cup. 5 days. Better drink your coffee. The Meridian Gala was held in the atrium of the Thorne Tower. 500 people under a ceiling of glass and gold. Champagne moving through the crowd on silver trays like a slow, bright river. And it was, I understood the moment I walked in, an execution dressed as a celebration. I had seen it before in the old life. You don't kill a great company in a boardroom. Boardrooms are for paperwork. You kill it at a party where everyone is smiling and no one can raise their voice. Where the cameras are rolling and the champagne is free and the victim is expected to be gracious. Era stood near the center of it in a gown the color of gunmetal, radiant and untouchable, and to my eyes and mine alone quietly dying, because Arthur had already told her. I could see it in the red letters that bled under her chin every time someone congratulated her on the exciting new chapter. Notch a vote is in 5 days, and I have no move left, and I am going to lose my father company in front of all these people and smile the whole time. Brendan orbited her like a moon, resplendent, one hand always finding the small of her back, and every time he touched her the red under his chin said the same greedy thing. Mine soon. All of it. Mine. And I came as the houseboy. Of course I did. It was the only role that let me walk through that room invisible. And invisible was still for a few more days the most powerful thing I could be. I took a glass I didn't /T drink. I let people /SI slide off me. I stood at the edges and I read the room like a ledger. And it was extraordinary. The things 500 powerful people say without saying them. Board members assuring each other the merger was the right thing for shareholders. Read. I don't /T understand the deal, but Arthur scares me and Brendan pays me. Meridian executives shaking hands warmly with Thorn executives read. We /Re going to gut you and route everything through Guangzhou by spring. An entire ballroom of smiles laid over an entire ballroom of knives. And I was the only man alive who could see both layers at once, and I have never in my life felt so calm. Then Arthur took the stage. He tapped a glass. The bright river of the crowd went still. And Arthur Thorne stood up there under the gold light and gave a speech about family and legacy and the future. And beneath his chin, the red truth ran the whole time like a subtitle from hell. None of you matter. This is mine now. I /V waited 30 years in my brother /S shadow, and it /S finally mine. And then he did the thing Edgar had warned me about. And so, Arthur said warmly, with the full support of the board, I am delighted to announce that we /LL be moving to confirm this historic partnership at a special shareholder meeting this Friday. No sense waiting on the future. Polite, puzzled applause. Era /S face did not move. Under her chin, Friday, he said, and moved it to Friday. He /S cornering me. I have nothing. I have nothing. And Arthur went on, raising his glass, eyes finding Era. I /D like to ask my niece, our brilliant CEO, and Brendan, the architect of this deal, the future of this company, to come up and toast it with me, the old guard and the new together. It was masterful. I /LL give him that. There was no way to refuse. 500 people, 100 cameras, a raised glass. To decline was to declare war in public on your own family on the night of your company /S triumph. To look bitter, small, unstable, exactly the vulnerability they /D been whispering about for weeks. So Allor Thorne walked up onto that stage with her spine straight and her chin high. And she stood between her uncle and the man who was stealing her life. And Brendan slid his arm around her waist for the cameras. And she raised her glass and smiled, a smile so beautiful and so dead that it should have stopped every heart in the room. And under her chin, the red letters said very quietly, Dad, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I couldn't /T hold it. And something in me, watching my wife apologize to her dead father in a language only I could read, simply decided. I had planned to stay invisible until Friday. Invisible was correct. Invisible was safe. But there are moments when the strategically correct thing and the necessary thing part ways, and a man has to choose which one he can live with. And I found that I could not live with letting her stand up there believing she was alone. So the houseboy did something the houseboy had never done. He set down his untouched glass, and he picked up a full one, and he stepped forward out of the shadows at the edge of the room, and in a clear, pleasant voice that carried all the way up to the gold ceiling he said, Could I add a toast? 500 heads turned. Arthur /S smile froze. Brendan /S arm tightened around my wife, and Era looked down at me from that stage with an expression of pure undiluted alarm. And under her chin flared one red word. Enormous, desperate. No, I smiled up at her, warm and harmless. The picture of a devoted, slightly foolish husband who doesn't /T know his place. I know I am just the husband, I said, and a ripple of amused, pitying laughter went through the crowd, which was exactly what I wanted, because a room that /S laughing at you has already decided you /Re not a threat. And a room that /S decided you /Re not a threat will let you say anything. I don't /T understand mergers. I don't /T understand any of this, honestly. But I understand my wife, and I just want to say I raised my glass toward the stage that in 3 years I have never once seen Era Thorne make a decision that wasn't /T the right one for this company. Not once. So whatever happens Friday, However the shareholders vote, I know one thing for certain. I let my eyes move just for a beat from Era to Brendan. And I let my pleasant smile stay exactly as warm as it had been. And I said, the people in this room who really understand this deal, the ones who read every page, who know exactly what routes the freight will run after it closes, and exactly what these terminals will be worth in 14 months. They not worried at all. Are they, Brendan? You read every page. Tell them not to worry. The room chuckled, charmed by the earnest little house boy toasting his wife. But up on the stage, Brendan Delgado had gone very slightly gray because Brendan had read every page, and Brendan knew about the emissions liability and the roots in Guanga and the 14 months. And Brendan had just heard the house boy, the corpse, the nobody, the man who was supposed to be crawling off to die, casually name every single buried knife in the deal, while smiling like a fool at a party. And beneath his chin, where only I could see it, the red letters spelled out the most beautiful thing I had read all night. How does he know? How does he keep knowing? Who is he? Torah, I said cheerfully and drank, and 500 people drank with me, and the moment passed, and I melted back into the crowd and became furniture again. But it was done. I had told Brendan in front of the whole world, and in a language the whole world couldn't hear, that someone was standing in the dark who could see everything. And when I glanced back up at the stage, my wife was no longer looking at Arthur or at Brendan or at the cameras. She was looking at me through the crowd with her glass still half raised and her dead, beautiful smile finally minutely cracked. And under her chin in trembling red was a sentence that made the whole reckless risk worth it. That wasn't TA toast. That was a message. Who are you? Who have I been married to for 3 years? And why do I suddenly feel for the first time since my father died like I am not standing here alone? She came to my room that night. In 3 years, she had never once come to my room. I was still awake, sitting in the dark with my laptop closed when the soft knock came. And when I opened the door, Era was standing there in the hallway with her gown traded for a plain robe and her armor traded for something I had almost never seen on her. Uncertainty. Can I come in? She said. It wasn't really a question. She came in. She stood in the middle of my small plain room, this woman who owned palaces. And she wrapped her arms around herself. And for a while she didn't say anything at all, and neither did I, because I had learned that silence was the one thing that could coax the truth out of the open where the red letters lived. That toast, she finally said at the gala. What was that? I was toasting my wife. Don T. Her voice was quiet, but the word had an edge. Don T. Do the small voice. Not right now. Not to me. She turned to face me, and her gray eyes searched my face in the dark. And under her chin, the red letters were already leaking. I know what I heard. I know what I saw on Brendan S face. Please, please stop pretending. I am so tired of everyone in my life pretending. I looked at that and I made a decision to give her a little, not all of it. A little, a door. You in trouble, I said. Not the merger. Deeper than the merger. They have something on you. Something that has nothing to do with shares or votes. Something that S been making you push everyone away for 3 years, including me. That S what tonight was really about. Not the company, whatever they holding over you. Her breath caught under her chin. How does he know? How does he always suddenly know? Caleb, you don't have to tell me what it is, I said gently. I am not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that I see it, that I seen it for a while, and that whatever it is, you not carrying it as well as you think you are, and you don't have to carry it alone. And then Era Thorne, the iceberg, the blade, the winter queen, who had not let me touch her in 3 years, sat down on the edge of my narrow bed and put her face in her hands and told me, not because I asked, because I hadn't T. Because I had spent a lifetime learning that people don't T confess to interrogation. They confess to the first person who makes it safe to stop performing. And because, God help her, she had run out of anywhere else to put it down. When my father was dying, she said into her hands, In those last weeks, Arthur was already circling, and Dad was signing things. So many things. He was moving assets, restructuring the trust. He said he was protecting me. He said, when I am gone, the wolves will come, and I am building you a wall. Her voice cracked. And I was the executive. I signed where he told me to sign. I didn't read half of it, Caleb. He was dying. I was watching my father die. I signed whatever the lawyers put in front of me because he asked me to, and then he was gone. She lifted her head. Her eyes were wet and furious. 8 months after the funeral, Arthur came to my office and put a folder on my desk. And the folder said that in those last weeks, my father had illegally moved $400 million in company assets into private vehicles, stolen it, defrauded the shareholders, the pension fund, everyone, and that every single fraudulent transfer was signed by me as executive. Arthur had it all, notarized, time-stamped, a complete airtight case, proving that Robert Thorne was a thief and his daughter was his accomplice. The red letters under her chin were pouring now, and they matched her words exactly, which meant every terrible thing she was saying she believed to be true. It would destroy him. Everything he built, 40 years, his whole name gone, turned into a headline, a scandal, a joke, and me in prison, and the company seized, and my father remembered as a criminal forever. I couldn't let them do that to him. So, I did whatever Arthur wanted for 3 years, every ugly thing. And now, the last thing he wants is the company itself. And I'm going to give it to him, too. Because the alternative is letting the world spit on my father S grave, and I would rather lose everything he built than let them destroy who he was. She wiped her eyes, angry at the tears. So now you know. Now you know why I been a monster. Now you know why you have to leave. Because when Friday comes and I hand it all over, I don't want you anywhere near the blast. And I sat there in the dark and I looked at my wife and I understood finally and completely the exact shape of the cage they built around her. And I understood something else, too. Something that made my heart start to pound. Because I had just spent a week living inside the identical trap from the other side. Edwin Hawkins. 40 million moved through a shell structured to look like embezzlement, notarized, time-stamped, held in a safe as a leash. The same architecture, the same forger S signature, the exact same trick run twice by the same soft, cruel hand, which meant era S father almost certainly hadn't stolen anything at all. Arthur had done to Robert S memory precisely what he done to Hawkins S future, built a beautiful, notarized, time-stamped version of reality in which an innocent man was guilty and used it as a leash. The 400 million had probably moved exactly the way Robert said it had into a wall to protect his daughter, and then Arthur had simply repapered the paper trail to invert its meaning. The evidence wasn't evidence. It was a forgery. A very, very good forgery. Good enough to fool a grieving daughter who never dared look at it closely because looking at it hurt too much. And forgeries, unlike facts, can be broken. But I couldn't tell her that. Not yet. Because if I told her the blackmail was fake, she confront Arthur, and Arthur would know his leash had been discovered, and he either destroy the evidence, leaving me nothing to prove, or accelerate the vote even further, or simply release the forgery preemptively to control the story. No, the forgery had to stay Arthur S secret until the exact moment I could reach into his safe, take the original, prove it was fake, and hand him his own severed leash at the precise instant it would break him. 5 days. So instead of telling her the truth that would have set her free that very night, I did the second hardest thing I have ever done. I sat down beside my wife on the narrow bed, and I did not touch her because she wasn't ready, and neither was I. And I said quietly, your father was a good man. Whatever S in that folder, I don't believe for 1 second that Robert Thorne was a thief. Under her chin in red, small and broken and unbearably grateful. Neither do I. I never did. but believing it ISN backslash T the same as being able to prove it. And I backslash V had 3 years, and I backslash V never found a way. And I backslash am so tired. And you backslash re the first person who backslash S ever just said it out loud like it was obvious. Get some sleep, I said. Friday backslash S a long way off, longer than you think. She looked at me for a moment in the dark, and something passed between us that we had never once in 3 years of marriage allowed. And then she stood and gathered her rope. And at the door she paused without turning around, and said in a voice I backslash D never heard her use, thin and young. Who are you, Caleb? Really? Read under her averted chin. Because I married a stranger to obey my father, and somewhere in 3 years, the stranger became the only thing holding me up, and I donned backslash T even know his real name. I backslash am your husband, I said. It was the truest thing I owned. And after she backslash D gone, I opened my laptop and I stopped buying stock quietly. And I started building the second half of the plan. The half that ended with me standing over an open safe. Because now it wasn't backslash T just about the votes anymore. Now I was going to clear a dead man backslash S name. I had 5 days, 1 impossible weapon, and 3 lines of attack. And I ran all 3 at once. The first line was chaos. Remember Justin? My good friend Justin, the pipe running straight to Brendan backslash S ear. I called him for coffee, and I sat across from him looking haggard and scared, and I told him in the strictest confidence that I backslash D overheard something terrifying. I couldn't backslash T sleep, I whispered. So I was up walking the halls and Arthur was on the phone in his study and Justin, I think Meridian backslash is playing them. I think the mystery buyer, the one gobbling up the stock. I think it backslash S Meridian itself. I think they backslash quietly buying control on the open market so that the second the merger closes, they don backslash T just get the assets, they get everything. And they cut Arthur and Brendan out completely. I think Brendan backslash S partners are about to swallow him whole. It was a lie. The buyer was me. But it was a beautiful lie because it was shaped exactly like the truth Brendan was already afraid of. And a lie shaped like your own fear is the easiest thing in the world to believe. Justin backslash S eyes went wide red under his chin. This is huge. This is worth a fortune. I have to tell Brendan right now. Don backslash T tell anyone, I begged him. Promise me. Of course not, man. He said, red. I backslash him texting him in the parking lot. And sure enough, I know because Hawkins told me. Within the hour, Brendan Delgado stormed into Arthur backslash S office white with fury, convinced their own merger partner was double-crossing them. And the 2 architects of the coup spent an entire precious day of my 5 tearing at each other and at Meridian backslash S deal team, demanding to know who was buying the stock, poisoning their own alliance with a suspicion I had planted for the price of a cup of coffee. Chaos is cheap. That backslash S the first thing they teach you in the world I came from. The second line was the forger. Hawkins backslash S leaked documents gave me the pattern, the same notary stamp, the same formatting quirks appearing on both the paper that framed him and I was now certain, the paper that framed Robert Thorne. And the pattern led to a name, Felix Nash, a documents and authentication consultant who did very quiet, very expensive work for men like Arthur. I did not go to see Felix Nash as the houseboy. I went as Orion, or at least as Orion backslash S money, arriving through a lawyer who represented an interested party, offering Mr. Nash a consulting retainer 3 times what Arthur paid him. And I sat in on the meeting as the lawyer backslash S silent, forgettable assistant. And I watched Felix Nash lie. I do strictly legitimate authentication work, Nash said smoothly. Red, I backslash V forged 400 documents in this city, and 2 of them are going to hang the Thorne girl. I backslash V, he never done anything I backslash D be ashamed to defend in court. Red, if the Thorne papers ever get examined by a real forensic lab, I backslash LL do 15 years. There it was. 2 red sentences, and I had the whole map. The Robert Thorne evidence was forged. Felix Nash had forged it. And Felix Nash was terrified of one specific thing, a forensic document examination. Because forgery, however good, leaves fingerprints, ink dates, paper batches, toner chemistry. A very good forger can fool a grieving daughter. He cannot fool a mass spectrometer. I now knew exactly how to break the thing that had caged my wife for 3 years. I just had to get my hands on the original. The third line was the hardest and the most delicate, the board. Because even if I blocked the conversion, even if I broke the blackmail on Friday, it would still come down to a vote of human beings in a room. And right now, most of those human beings were Arthur / frightened, bought, or bored creatures. I couldn't / T by them. I didn't / T have time, and it wasn't / T my way. But I could do something better. I could show them the truth one at a time, and let the truth do what fear could not. I started with Nia Adebayo. She was the one independent director on the board with a spine and a reputation. A former federal judge appointed in Robert / Day, the kind of person who had joined the board believing it meant something. I arranged to sit next to her at a compliance luncheon in my houseboy capacity carrying era / coat, and I made myself so harmless that she spoke freely, and I asked her mildly whether she was comfortable with the merger. It / not my place to be uncomfortable, she said diplomatically. The board voted to recommend it. Red, I hate this deal. Something is wrong with this deal, and no one will tell me what, and I / V been a coward about it. Judge Adebayo, I said quietly, and I dropped the small voice just for her, just for a moment. The way I had for Lana, the way I had for Hawkins, because I was learning that the small voice was a key that only worked in one direction. And there were certain people for whom you had to show them the real one. I / M, just the husband. I donned / T have a vote, and I donned / T have standing, and after Friday, I probably won / T have a marriage, but you were a judge. So, I / am going to tell you 3 facts, and then I / am going to leave you alone, and you can do whatever you want with them. And I told her about the emissions liability and the Guangzhou routing and the 15% conversion clause buried on page 11 that would hand control to a Arthur Trust the instant the deal closed. Facts, all of them verifiable, public if you knew where to look. The kind of facts a former federal judge could confirm for herself in an afternoon. I didn't / T ask her for anything. I didn't / T tell her how to vote. I just handed a person who had spent a lifetime hunting the truth the 3 pieces of it that had been hidden from her. And I watched the red letters under her chin change in real time from my / V, been a coward about it, to something new and cold and clarifying. My God, it / S not a merger. It / S a theft, and I almost signed my name to it. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Her voice had changed. You said yourself you have nothing to gain. Because you / re the only person on that board who joined it thinking the word director was a responsibility instead of a perk. I said standing, picking up my wife / S coat, folding myself back down into the houseboy. And because on Friday when Arthur stands up and asks you to vote, I think Robert Thorne would have wanted at least one person in that room who could still tell the difference between what / S legal and what / S right. That / S all. Enjoy your lunch, Judge. I walked away, and I did not look back, and I did not need to because I had read the future in the red letters under her chin as clearly as if it were already printed in the minutes. Nia Adebayo was going to spend the next 3 days quietly confirming every fact I / D given her. And she was going to arrive at Friday / S vote as an entirely different weapon than the one Arthur was counting on. One director. It doesn't / T sound like much, but that / S how you turn a board. Not all at once, not with money, but one honest person at a time. Each one's certain they / re alone until the morning they look around the table and discover they never were. Chaos in the alliance. A forger with a fatal fear. A judge with the truth in her hands. 3 lines, 3 days gone, 2 to go. And I was just beginning to let myself believe it might actually work. When I came home Wednesday night, walked into my dark room, reached for the light, and heard from the armchair in the corner the smooth, easy voice of a man who had been sitting there in the dark waiting for me. You know, Brendan Delgado said, not moving. For a houseboy, you are a very, very hard man to find anything out about. I backslash V had people looking since your little toast. 3 years married into this family, and their backslash S almost nothing about you before it. No school records that add up, no employment history that holds. It backslash S almost like he leaned forward into the faint light from the window, and he was smiling. But the smile didn't backslash T reach his eyes, and I didn't backslash T even need to read the red beneath his chin to know I backslash D been careless somewhere. It backslash S almost like Caleb Stone didn't backslash T exist at all until the day he married Thorne. So, I backslash am going to ask you one time, Manto Man in the dark, where it backslash S just us. Who are you really? And what exactly do you think you backslash redoing? Here is what I had learned in 3 years of being underestimated. The most powerful thing you can hand a suspicious man is a smaller, uglier truth than the one he backslash S hunting for. Brendan wanted to catch a titan, so I gave him a rat, and I let him feel clever for catching it. You got me, I said. I turned on the light slowly, so he backslash D feel in control, and I sat down on the edge of the bed across from him with my shoulders slumped, and I let my face collapse into the sheepish, cornered look of a man whose small con has been rumbled. Their backslash S no school records because I paid to have them cleaned up. Their backslash S no work history because their ISN backslash T1 worth having. You want the truth, Brendan? Caleb Stone is a name I backslash VE had for about 4 years. Before that, I was a nobody who was very, very good at one thing: finding rich, lonely people and making myself indispensable to them. I watched him lean in, hungry for it. Robert Thorne was dying and terrified and looking for someone to trust, and I made him trust me, and he handed me 4% of his company as a gift and married me to his Ice Queen daughter. And I have spent 3 years playing the devoted houseboy, waiting for exactly one thing. I let myself look greedy. The payout. I'd on backslash T1 era. I never wanted era. I want what walking away from era is worth. And when you people offered me 8 million to sign and disappear, I did the math and I realized you were lowballing me, because those 4% are worth a lot more than 8 million to somebody, or you wouldn't backslash T want them so badly. So, I didn't backslash T sign. I backslash am holding out. That backslash S all this is, Brendan. That backslash S the whole mystery. It backslash S not a conspiracy. It backslash S a shakedown. I backslash am a grifter angling for a bigger number. Silence. And Brendan Delgado looked at me, and under his chin in red, I read the exact moment the hook set. Oh, thank God. That backslash S all he is. A gold digger holding out for a better price. I understand. Gold diggers. Gold diggers I can buy. He started to laugh. He actually relaxed back into the chair and laughed. The tension flowing out of him because I had just handed him a version of me that fit perfectly into the way Brendan Delgado understood the world. Everyone backslash S for sale. Everyone backslash S running a con. The only question is the number. A titan in the dark would have terrified him. A rat with his hand out just made him feel like the smartest man in the room again. You know what? He said, wiping his eye. I actually respect that. That backslash S the first honest thing anyone said to me in this whole circus. Fine. You want a number? Let backslash S talk a number. What makes you sign and vanish and never bother Lara or this deal again? And now it was my turn to hunt, because a relaxed liar is a generous one. And Brendan Delgado had just opened his own vault and invited me in. Before I name a number, I said, I need to know at backslash S a number you can actually pay. No offense, but you backslash re the strategy officer, not the owner. Where backslash S the money coming from? Don backslash T worry about where the money backslash S coming from. Red under his chin, bright and immediate. I backslash am leveraged to my eyeballs. I put every cent I have and 40 million I don backslash T into buying my way to the top of this deal. If the merger doesn't backslash T close Friday, I backslash am not just broke. I backslash am finished. The people I borrowed from Don backslash T send lawyers. Oh, Brendan. Oh, you beautiful, overextended fool. There it was. The thing I backslash D been missing. The crack in the golden boy. Brendan Delgado wasn't a rich man taking a company. He was a broke man betting his life on taking a company. Mortgaged past the hilt to dangerous people. And if Friday S vote failed, he didn't walk away poorer. He walked away destroyed, or worse. Which meant Brendan needed this deal to close far more desperately than Arthur did. Which meant Brendan was the weak point in the alliance, not the strong one. Which meant every ounce of pressure I could put on Friday S outcome landed hardest on the one man least able to survive it. I filed it away with all the rest. And I named him a number, a big greedy grifter S number, 20 million, exactly what a rat would ask for. And I watched him wheeze and haggle and eventually agree in principle. After the deal closes out of the proceeds, and under his chin the Red said, I LL promise him anything. There won TB any proceeds for him. The second I have control, he gets nothing. And if he makes noise, he has an accident. And I smiled and shook his hand and thanked him and played the satisfied little schemer. And all the while, I was recording every word of it on the phone in my shirt pocket because Brendan had just verbally confessed in a private room to bribing a shareholder to swing a vote. And I was learning that the most useful thing about a man who thinks you re beneath him is that he LL say anything in front of you, right up until the day you play it back. When he finally left, easy and satisfied, certain he D bought off the last loose end, I sat alone in my room and listened to the recording twice, and then I made 2 calls. The first was to Edwin Hawkins. Edwin, I said, I need to know where Arthur keeps the original documents. Not the copies, the safe. The real one, the Robert Thorne papers, your embezzlement papers, whatever else he using as leashes. Where does a man like Arthur keep the one thing that makes him untouchable? A long pause, then quietly. Their a vault. Not at the office, at his house, behind the wine cellar. Biometric, his thumb, and a code that changes weekly. I V seen it open twice. Caleb, you can T get into that. Nobody can get into that. That S the whole point of it. I don't T need to break into it, Edwin. I said, I just need to be standing next to it at the exact moment Arthur opens it himself. Which means I need one more thing from you. I need to know the one thing on this earth that would make Arthur Thorne run home and open that vault with his own thumb in a panic without thinking. Silence on the line. Then Hawkins slowly understanding. You want to scare him into checking on his own leverage. I want to scare him into checking on all of it at once. I said Thursday night, the night before the vote. I want Arthur Thorne so frightened that his most precious secrets are in danger that he does the one thing. The second call I made was to a number on the North Bluff, and it was answered on the first ring by a voice. The second call I made was to a number on the North Bluff, and it was answered on the first ring by a voice like gravel rolled down a well. Edgar, I said, you told me if I could hold the line myself, you'd cast your shares with Edgar. I'm calling to tell you the moment's going to be Friday morning in the boardroom in front of everyone. But before Friday, there's Thursday night. And on Thursday night, I'm going to need your help with something that isn't strictly legal. And I need to know before I tell you what it is, whether an 88-year-old man who claims he's tired of watching still has one good piece of theater left in him. The old man was quiet for a moment, and then Edgar Thorne began to laugh, low and dry, and delighted. The laugh of a titan who has been bored for a decade and has just been handed a reason to get out of his chair. Boy, he said, I built an empire out of one leased freighter and a lie about a cargo I didn't have. Tell me what you need, and tell me who gets to watch Arthur's face when it happens. Because I have waited 30 years to see my son understand finally that he was never the smartest person in the room. Lie about a cargo I didn't T have. Tell me what you need, and tell me who gets to watch Arthur S face when it happens. Because I have waited 30 years to see my son understand finally that he was never the smartest person in the room. He was just the only one still talking. The trap was Edgar S idea to bait and mine to spring. And it worked because it used the one force stronger than Arthur S caution, which was Arthur S greed. On Thursday afternoon, the old man on the bluff, who had not involved himself in family business in 10 years, telephoned his son, and said in the flat, plain voice that produced no red letters because it needed none, "Arthur, I/V been watching. I/V decided. This mystery buyer has me nervous, and a nervous man picks a side. I/M prepared to bring my founder's shares in behind you at Friday/S vote and in this thing for good. But I don/T back a hand I haven't/T seen. Before I commit the shares that built this company, I want to see the leverage you have on Arrow with my own eyes. The real documents tonight at my house. Convince me at/S ironclad and you/LL walk into that boardroom tomorrow with the one weapon your brother never had. Mine. I would have paid a great deal of money to see Arthur Thorne/S face when he hung up that phone because I know exactly what the red letters would have said, and they would have said what greed always says, which is yes. Of course, yes. The old man/S shares settled everything. With Edgar behind him, the vote wasn't/TA fight. It was a coronation. All he had to do was drive up to the bluff and show his father the papers. What careful, cruel Arthur did not consider, because careful, cruel men never do, was the single question that should have stopped him at the door. Why would a man who has stayed out of it for 10 years suddenly need to see the evidence tonight, the night before the vote, in person, alone? He didn't/T ask it. Greed doesn't/T ask questions. It just brings the folder. We were waiting for him in Edgar/S study. Edgar in his great chair by the fire, wrapped in his blanket, the very picture of a tired old man ready to hand over his kingdom. And in the next room, behind a door left open exactly 4 in, 3 people Arthur did not know were there. Edwin Hawkins, holding a small recorder. Felix Nash, the forger, flipped not with a threat, but with the simplest thing in the world, a better offer and a way out. Or Ian/S lawyer, having explained to Mr. Nash that he could either be a witness or a defendant, and that the retainer came with immunity or without it, depending entirely on which room he chose to stand in tonight. And me, the houseboy, sitting in the dark with my phone recording and my eyes fixed on the 4 inches gap, waiting to read every red letter that fell out from under Arthur Thorne/'s chin. He arrived at 9 o'clock. He swept in, smelling of cologne and confidence folder under his arm, and he sat across from his father, and he opened it on the table between them like a man laying down a winning hand. It/S airtight, Dad, he said, spreading the pages. Robert moved $400 million in his last weeks, every transfer signed by Alara as executive. Fraud, plain and provable. She/S known for 3 years. 1 phone call, and she/S ruined. Robert/S name is ruined. And the company falls to whoever/S holding it clean. Red under his chin, gleeful. And that/S me. It was always going to be me. I built this. 30 years in Robert/S shadow, and now his own daughter dances when I pull the string. Edgar picked up the pages. He put on his glasses. He read slowly, the firelight moving on the paper, and the room was very quiet. And then the old man said without looking up in that plain voice, "Arthur, who prepared these documents?" A flicker read, "Don/T tell him about Nash." "Our people," Arthur said smoothly. "Legal. Why does it matter? The point is the signatures." "The point," said Edgar, "is that I spent 40 years signing documents, and I know what a document looks like when it/S been born honestly, and what it looks like when it/S been born in a back room. And these," he turned a page, held it to the light, "these have been born in a back room, Dad. Because here/S what troubles me, son." Edgar set the pages down and looked at Arthur over his glasses. And there was nothing tired in his face now, nothing retired, just the cold, clear founder who had built an empire and buried the men who underestimated him. "You say Robert moved this money in his final weeks. But I knew my son, and more than that," the old man/S voice dropped. "I know paper and the toner on these transfer authorizations sits on top of the notary stamp, Arthur, on top of it, which means the stamp went on first and the fraud went on after, which means someone took real notarized pages and printed new crimes onto them, which means these aren't /T evidence of anything Robert did. They backslash re-evidence of something you did. Silence. Absolute silence. And under Arthur Thorne backslash S chin in enormous trembling red, the truth finally tore free. How does he know? How could he possibly know that? No one knows paper like that anymore except his head turned toward the 4 inches gap in the door. And I stood up and I walked out into the firelight, the houseboy holding my phone, and behind me came Edwin Hawkins with his recorder, and behind him came Felix Nash. And I watched the exact instant Arthur Thorne understood that the room he thought was a coronation had been a courtroom all along. "Hello, Uncle Arthur," I said. "You backslash VE met everyone, I think." "Edwin, you know, you backslash VE been threatening him for 2 years. And Mr. Nash, you definitely know. You backslash VE paid him to forge. Let backslash SC." I glanced at Nash. "How many, Felix?" 14 documents for Arthur Thorne," Felix Nash said, and his voice shook, but the words were clear. And no red letters bloomed beneath his chin, because for the first time in a long time he was telling the truth, and it was setting him free. Including the Robert Thorne executive pages and the Hawkins embezzlement file, all forged, all on my equipment. I backslash LL swear to it. I have the source files with the timestamps. That backslash SA recording, I said gently, nodding at Hawkins backslash S device. And so is this. I lifted my phone. And I also have you, Brendan, and $8 million on a separate recording from Wednesday night. But that backslash S tomorrow backslash S problem. I crouched down so I was level with Arthur, who had gone the gray-white color of a man whose whole architecture is collapsing at once. And I let the houseboy fall away entirely for the first time in 3 years. And I let him see what Robert had actually bought. "You build a version of the world out of forged paper," I said quietly. "And you used it to make an honest man betray his employer and a grieving daughter betray her own father backslash S memory. For 3 years, Era has been on her knees to you to protect a name you invented a crime against. Tonight, that ends. I backslash am keeping the originals. Mr. Nash is keeping his confession. And tomorrow morning in the boardroom in front of the whole company, you backslash going to find out what it feels like to be the one who can backslash T stop what backslash S coming." Arthur backslash S mouth worked. You backslash the houseboy. You backslash nobody. You backslash who are you? And from his great chair by the fire, Edgar Thorne answered for me in a voice full of a delight 30 years in the making. He backslash S the man Robert hired to guard the thing you tried to steal, you jackal. He backslash S been sitting at your table for 3 years reading your face while you called him furniture. And tomorrow, the old man smiled. Tomorrow you backslash going to watch him hand your whole kingdom back to my granddaughter. And there backslash S not one forged page left in the world that can stop him. Arthur ran. He grabbed nothing. The originals were mine now. And he stumbled out into the night to his car. And I let him go because a cornered man will always run straight to his last ally. And I wanted him to. I wanted Arthur to spend Thursday night doing exactly what he did. Calling Brendan in a panic at midnight to scream that it was over, that the leverage was gone, that some titan in a cheap suit had the forger and the recordings and the founder both. And I wanted Brendan Delgado, mortgaged past his life to men who donned backslash T send lawyers, to lie awake until dawn, understanding that the deal he backslash D bet everything on was going to die in a boardroom in 9 hours and take him down with it. Let them not sleep. I backslash D slept fine all week. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow I stopped being the houseboy in public and gave my wife back her father backslash S name and let 500 forged pages and 2 frightened men and 30 years of a jackal backslash S patience burn down together in a single room. And the only person in that boardroom who still wouldn't backslash T know what was about to happen was the one I was doing all of it for. Friday came gray and bright, and at 10 o'clock the shareholders of Thorne Global filed into the great boardroom on the 40th floor, and I walked in among them, wearing my cheap suit, carrying nothing, and took a seat against the back wall in the row reserved for spouses and assistants and other people who donned backslash T matter. Old habits last time. Era sat at the head of the table where a CEO sits, straight-spined, and gray-eyed and beautiful. And I could read in the red beneath her chin that she had come to lose. Just get through it. Don /T cry. Don /T let them see. Hold the line until it /S done, and then you can fall apart alone. And it took everything I had not to cross that room right then and tell her to lift her head. That the sky was about to change. Arthur came in gray and sleepless, and Brendan came in worse. And they sat together on one side of the long table like two men lashed to the same sinking thing, which they were. Nia Adebayo took her seat with a leather portfolio and a stillness I recognized. The stillness of a former judge who has spent 3 days confirming facts and has arrived at a verdict. And at the far end, in a wheelchair he did not need but enjoyed the theater of, wrapped in his blanket, having not set foot in this building in 10 years, sat Edgar Thorne, founder, come down at last from the bluff, and the whole room rippled and whispered at the sight of him, and no one understood why he was there. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Arthur called the meeting to order with a gavel that trembled slightly in his hand. He got through the preliminaries fast, too fast. A man rushing to reach the guillotine before the crowd notices something /S wrong. We /re here to vote on the Meridian merger, he said. The board recommends it unanimously. I /D like to move straight to point of order. Nia Adebayo /S voice was quiet, and it stopped the room like a dropped stone. Before any vote, Arthur, I /D like the record to reflect a question. It /S come to my attention that the merger /S governing documents contain a conversion mechanism, page 11, under which control of the company /S core assets passes to a trust on closing, provided the unaffiliated float sits below 15% on the record date. A murmur went through the shareholders. Arthur /S face did something complicated. Nia, that /S a standard. Is it below 15%, Arthur? Otavio asked. Because I /D like that confirmed for the record before we vote on anything. And there it was, the question I /D handed her, arriving exactly when I needed it. Arthur turned too quickly to Edwin Hawkins, who sat at the CFO /S place with his hands folded, and for the first time in 3 years, no fear at all on his face. Edwin, Arthur said, the float. Tell them at /S 14 point something. Tell them. Hawkins opened a single sheet of paper. As of this morning /S record date, he said in a steady voice that carried to every corner of that room. The unaffiliated float stands at 20.1%. The conversion cannot trigger. It has been mathematically dead for 6 days. The room erupted. Arthur shot to his feet. That /S impossible. That /S the float was 19. Someone would have had to buy 5% of this company. Nobody bought 5% of this company. Who bought 5% of this company? And I stood up in the back row in my cheap suit, and I said in a voice that was not the houseboy /S voice, a voice I had not used in public in 3 years, a voice that had once moved markets. I did. Every head in that room turned. AR /S turned last and slowest, and when her gray eyes found me standing there, something crossed her face that I had waited 3 years to see. Not hope this time, but recognition. The dawning terrible recognition of a woman realizing the man she /D been told was furniture had been the load-bearing wall the whole time. I walked to the front of the room. I didn't /T hurry. 500 people or 50, it doesn't /T matter. The walk is the same, and I had made it before in rooms bigger than this one. For those who don't /T know me, I said I /M Caleb Stone. For 3 years, most of you have known me as Era Thorne /S husband, the houseboy, the nobody who married up. I reached the head of the table. But before I was any of that, I ran money. A lot of it. Some of you in this room have lost sleep over a counterparty you never met, who traded under a single name and never a face. I let that sit and I watched it land. Watched 3 or 4 of the older shareholders go very still. Watched the name arrive in their eyes before I said it. You knew me as Orion. The silence that followed had a different quality than any silence that had come before. It was the silence of a room recalculating everything at once. Arthur sat down slowly, as if his legs had stopped listening to him. And Brendan Delgado. Brendan mortgaged past his soul. Staring at me, Brendan whispered, and I didn't need the red to read it, because his lips shaped it plainly. Not him, not Orion, not the one buyer on earth I couldn't outbid. 6 days ago, I continued, I bought enough of this company on the open market to bury your conversion clause forever. Not to raid it, not to sell it, to defend it, because 3 years ago, a dying man named Robert Thorne asked me to guard his daughter and his life work from exactly the people sitting on that side of the table. And I gave him my word, and I have spent 3 years keeping it while you called me furniture. I turned to Era, and I dropped the market voice, and I spoke only to her in front of all of them the truest thing I had. He asked me never to tell you. I said he said you never forgive being managed, not even by him, not even from the grave. So I didn't tell you. I let you think you were alone because that was the only way you let me stay close enough to keep the promise. I'm sorry. You were never alone, Era. Not for one single day. Under her chin, the red letters had stopped forming careful lies. They came raw now, unguarded. A woman whole heart spilling out where only I could read it. Dad sent you. Dad knew. Dad reached out of the grave and put a guardian at my table. And I spent 3 years being cruel to the one person he trusted with my life. And you let me. You let me be cruel to you to keep me safe. Oh God. Who does that? Who loves someone like that? But I wasn't done keeping the promise. I said, turning back to the room, and my voice went cold again. Because the vote was blocked, but the vote had never been the real prison. Because guarding this company was only ever half of what Robert asked. The other half, the half I couldn't do until today, until I had the proof in my hands. I reached into my cheap jacket and drew out a single folder, and I set it on the marble in the exact spot where 2 weeks ago Arthur had set the papers meant to end me. The other half was clearing his name. So before anyone votes on anything, Uncle Arthur, I think it time we talk to the whole room about what actually in your safe. For 3 years, I said to the room, my wife has believed that her father spent his final weeks stealing $400 million from this company and that she unknowingly signed the fraudulent transfers as his executive. She has believed it because her Uncle Arthur showed her documents notarized, time-stamped, signed that proved it. And she has done everything Arthur asked of her ever since, quietly, obediently, to keep those documents from becoming public because she would rather lose this company than let the world remember Robert Thorne as a thief. I opened the folder. The documents are forgeries. Every one of them. Arthur was on his feet again. This is slander. This is a desperate Edgar. Are you going to let him? Sit down, son, said Edgar from his wheelchair. And there was so much iron in it that Arthur sat. I laid the pages out on the marble one at a time, the way Arthur had once laid them out to trap a grieving daughter. This is the original executive authorization, I said. And any forensic document examiner. We have one on retainer. Her report is in your packets. We'll tell you the same 3 things she told me. The notary stamp was applied first. The fraudulent transfer language was printed over it afterward in a toner formulation that didn't exist until 18 months ago. And the paper is from a batch manufactured a full year after Robert Thorne died. I looked up. Robert couldn't have signed a fraud onto paper that didn't exist while he was alive. Nobody could. Someone took genuine, harmless, notarized executive pages that Era really did sign at her dying father bedside and printed crimes onto them a year after the funeral to build a leash. The room had gone completely silent. Nia Adebayo was reading the forensic report with a focused stillness of a judge, and I watched her redless certainty settle into place. The man who forged them, I said, is named Felix Nash. He given a sworn statement, also in your packets, admitting to 14 forged documents commissioned and paid for by Arthur Thorne, including these, and including a second file used to frame this company own CFO, Edwin Hawkins, for an embezzlement he never committed in order to coerce his silence for 2 years. Edwin Hawkins stood up at his place. He didn't say anything. He just stood so that the whole room could see that the frightened man had a spine after all, and it was worth more than every forged page Arthur had ever bought. So, let /S be clear about what actually happened here, I said. And now I let the cold all the way in, because this was the part Robert had asked for. This was the name I /D come to clear. Robert Thorne did not steal from this company. In his last week's dying, he moved $400 million into protective vehicles for one reason: to build a wall around his daughter that his brother couldn't /T climb. That wasn't /T fraud. That was a father. And the moment he was in the ground, Arthur took the wall Robert built and repapered it into a prison, and he /S kept Robert /S own daughter locked inside it for 3 years by threatening to spit on her father /S grave. I turned to Era. Her hands were flat on the marble, and she was staring at the forensic report, and the red beneath her chin had dissolved into something that wasn't /T words anymore. Just a single repeating pulse of relief and grief and fury so large it had stopped being language. Your father wasn't /T a thief, Era, I said quietly. He was a good man who loved you so much he spent his last strength protecting you, and then let his brother frame him for it rather than risk you being unguarded. And he sent me to make sure that one day in a room full of witnesses, somebody could finally prove it. So it /S proven. It /S over. You can put it down now. She made a sound I had never heard her make in 3 years. And then Era Thorne put her face in her hands at the head of her own boardroom table and wept. Not the careful hidden cracking I /D read and read all week, but openly freely. The way a person weeps when a weight they /V carried so long they forgot it was a weight is finally lifted off. And not one person in that room mistook it for weakness because they had all just learned exactly what she /D been carrying and for how long and alone. Arthur tried one last time because jackals always do. Even if none of this changes the vote, the merger still stands on its own merits. The board still recommends. The board, said Nia Adebayo, closing the forensic report, standing, her voice ringing with 30 years of the bench, does not recommend a merger architected by a man who forges federal documents to blackmail his own family. I withdraw my support, and I /LL be referring everything in this packet to the authorities before lunch. And Arthur, as a former judge, one piece of advice. Get a lawyer before you say another word. One director. That /S how it starts. And then it wasn't /T1 because that /S also how it ends. All at once, the whole table turning the instant it becomes safe to directors who /D bin Arthur /S frightened creatures rediscovering their principles now that the fear had a crack in it. The recommendation collapsing in real time. And I still had one card left, the one I /D bin saving, because breaking Arthur cleared Robert /S name, but I had made a promise to a broke and dangerous man to give him exactly what he /D earned. One more thing for the record, I said, and I took out my phone and I set it on the marble and I pressed play. Brendan /S voice filled the boardroom, smooth and confident from a dark room 2 nights before. You want a number? Let /S talk a number. What makes you sign and vanish and never bother Era or this deal again? And then my own voice, and then his again, haggling. And then the part I /D cued it to, Brendan saying, easy and certain. I /LL promise him anything. There won't /T be any proceeds for him. The second I have control, he gets nothing. And the room listening to the architect of the merger cheerfully confessed to bribing a shareholder to swing the very vote they were sitting in. I clicked it off. Brendan Delgado had gone the color of ash. He wasn't /T looking at the room. He was looking at me, and his mouth was moving. And the red beneath his chin had stopped being strategy and become pure animal math. The deal /S dead. If the deal /S dead, I can /T cover the loans. If I can /T cover the loans, they /LL whatever he owed to whoever he owed it was coming due. And there was no version of this Friday where Brendan walked out golden. He didn't T get to be the villain who fights. He got to be the villain who realizes in front of everyone that he bet his whole life on a hand a houseboy had been quietly holding the entire time. "The vote," said Edgar Thorne, wheeling himself forward into the center of the room. And the old man /S voice was the voice of the founder now, the man who /D built all of it, and the room fell silent for him, the way rooms had fallen silent for him for 60 years. "I came down off my hill for the first time in 10 years to cast my shares today, so let /S cast them." He looked around the table at his gray, ruined son, at the ash-gray schemer, at the weeping granddaughter, and finally at me, the houseboy, the titan, the guardian. Robert had bought and dressed as furniture. And Edgar Thorne smiled and delivered the sentence, 30 years in the making. "All of my founders' shares," he said, "vote with ERA. They always should have. I was just waiting to see who /D finally be strong enough to stand next to her. And it turns out my son-in-law has been standing there the whole time and none of us could see him because we were all too busy looking down." The vote was a formality after that, and the formality was a landslide. The Meridian merger died on the boardroom floor. By noon, Nia Adebayo had walked Felix Nash /S confession and the forensic report into the offices of people whose job it is to care about forged federal documents. And by evening, Arthur Thorne had been served with the first of what his lawyers assured him would be many, many pieces of paper, real ones this time, born honestly, with his own name on them. He did not go quietly, but he went. Edgar stripped him of every share, every title, every key. The founder who had waited 30 years to intervene did it in a single afternoon and then wheeled himself back toward the elevator looking for the first time since I met him genuinely tired and genuinely at peace. As for Brendan didn't even last the day. The moment the merger died, his leverage died with it. And the people he /D borrowed his life from Don /T wait for court dates. By the time the boardroom emptied, he /D already stopped answering his phone, already booked something one way, already become exactly what he /D tried to make of me. A man walking away from the Thorne family with nothing, chased by a debt he couldn't /T pay, erased from a story he /D been so sure he was the hero of. I didn't /T gloat. I found standing in the wreckage of their coup that I didn't /T have it in me. When you can see every lie a person tells, you eventually see the small frightened thing underneath all of them. And it /S hard to hate a frightened thing, even one that tried to kill you. I just watched them fall, and I felt the promise I /D made a dying man finally fully come to rest. Justin, my good friend Justin, texted me that afternoon. "Heard the news, man. So happy for you. We should celebrate." And beneath the words in my mind /sigh, I could see the red as clearly as if he were standing in front of me. If he /S the money now, I need to get back on his good side. I looked at that text for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Thanks, Justin. By the way, I always knew about Brendan from the first coffee. I fed you every wrong thing on purpose." And I blocked him. And I felt 11 years of a friendship that had never really existed finally close like a door. Some people you don /T get to keep. The power just lets you stop pretending you ever had them. Lana found me in the hall outside the boardroom. She /D been in the room for all of it in the back, and she looked at me now like she /D never seen me before, which in a way she hadn't /T. "You told me," she said 2 weeks ago on the stairs. "You said when things got strange, I should remember the houseboy was the one who told me the truth." Red under her chin, but soft now. No cruelty left in it at all. He was the only one. The only one who ever treated me like I was a person and not a thorn. "I remember." I said. "I didn't /T believe you," she swallowed. "I want to now believe you about all of it. About being a person instead of a perk." She hesitated, 24 and lonely, and for the first time unarmored. "Do you think it /S too late for me to try being someone my grandfather doesn't /T look tired about?" "Lana," I said gently, "you just watched an entire empire discover it had misjudged somebody for 3 years. Take it from him. It backslash s never too late to be more than the version of you that people got lazy about. And I watched something I backslash d never seen on her face take root. Not a sneer, not boredom, but a small, terrified, genuine hope. One seed. You never know which lonely person is going to matter later. But all of that, Arthur falling, Brendan fleeing, Justin blocked, Lana blooming, all of it was just a noise around the one thing that actually mattered. And the one thing that actually mattered was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window at the end of the executive floor with her back to me, watching the city. And she had not said a single word to me since the boardroom. I came and stood beside her, not touching the way I backslash D learned. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sun was going down over the company her father built and her husband had just handed back to her, and I could see her face reflected in the dark glass, and I could see the red letters there too, and they were the most complicated thing I had ever read. "My father sent you," she finally said. Her voice was very quiet and very controlled, and I knew that control now. I knew what it cost. He was dying, and he decided I couldn't backslash T protect myself. So he found a stranger and he assigned him to me. He bought me a bodyguard and dressed him up as a marriage and made you promise never to tell me because he knew. He knew I would never have agreed to be managed, not even by him. Under her chin in trembling red. 3 years, everything I felt. Was it real, or was it the mission? Did you stay all those cold nights because you loved me, or because a dead man told you to? I don't backslash T know how to tell the difference, and it backslash S the only thing in the world I need to know. Era, so I have to ask you something. She turned from the glass and faced me, and her gray eyes were dry now, dry and terrified and demanding the truth. And I understood that this was the real vote, the only one that had ever mattered. And that unlike the boardroom, I had no card up my sleeve for it, no forged page to expose, no shares to buy, just the truth and the hope that it was enough. Everything that happened between us, she said, the 3 years, the nights you took care of me when I was cruel to you, the way you looked at me at the altar, was it the promise? Were you just guarding an asset my father assigned you? And here is the terrible, beautiful thing about being married to the one woman on earth whose lies I could see, but whose truth I had to earn. I could not read the answer she wanted off her chin because she didn't backslash T know it herself. There was no cheating this. There was no red text to guide me. There was only me standing at the edge of everything I backslash D spent 3 years protecting about to find out whether saving her had cost me her. Whether Robert had been right that she backslash D never forgive being managed, even by love, even by this. I opened my mouth to give her the truest thing I had ever owned. And Alara Thorne held up one hand to stop me, because there were tears standing in her eyes now, and she said in a voice stripped down to nothing, Don backslash T answer fast, please. I backslash V been lied to beautifully my whole life. So, whatever you backslash re about to say, I need it to be the one true thing. Because if you get this wrong, Caleb, I backslash LL believe you and I backslash LL spend the rest of my life not knowing. And I can backslash T. Her voice broke. I can backslash T lose my father and find out my marriage was a job in the same afternoon. So be careful. Be careful with the last true thing because I backslash am going to build the rest of my life on it. So I gave her the last true thing. Not fast. Your father assigned me to you. I said that part backslash S true. He found me when I was a man who had made a great deal of money and lost the ability to feel anything about it. And he asked me to guard the one thing he loved more than the company. And I said yes because I was hollow. And I wanted just once to protect a person instead of a portfolio. That backslash S how it started. A job. I won backslash T lie to you about that, Alara. Not today. Not ever again. Her face didn't backslash T move, but the red under her chin twisted. But here backslash S the thing your father got wrong. I said the one thing the smartest man I ever met didn't backslash T account for. He told me to guard you and never let you find out. He assumed the guarding would stay a job, and it did for about 4 months. And then one night you had a fever, a bad one. And you were half delirious and you backslash D spent the whole day being so cold to me I could barely breathe in the same house. And I came in to check on you because it was my job. And you grabbed my hand in your sleep, and you wooed and T let go. And you said you won T remember this. You said Don T leave. Everyone leaves. Please be the one who doesn't T leave. Her breath caught, and I sat there holding the hand of a woman who was cruel to me every waking hour. And I understood that the cruelty was a wall, and that behind the wall was the loneliest person I D ever met. And somewhere between that night and morning, the job died. It just died. And what was left wasn't T a promise to your father. It was me actually loving you and being too much of a coward to tell you because you D have called it the mission and pushed me out to protect yourself, which is exactly what you re trying to do right now. I stepped closer. You want to know how I can be sure it S not the promise? Because 2 weeks ago in that boardroom, I could have signed. I could have taken $8 million and walked away, and I D have kept the letter of every promise I ever made your father. Guard her, and when it S done, get clear. Signing was keeping the promise. Staying is what broke it. I broke my promise to a dead man I respected more than anyone alive. And I did it for one reason, and the reason is you. And it has been you for 3 years, and it was never, not for one single day, the job. She was crying now silently, and the red under her chin had become a single word repeated over and over, and it was yes, yes, yes. But I could see she didn't T trust it. Couldn't T trust it. 3 years of beautiful lies had taught her that the sweetest words were the most dangerous. And so I did the thing I had sworn I would never do. I gave her the weapon. There S one more thing I said. And after I tell you this, you LL have something over me that no one else on earth has. And you can use it or not, but you LL never again wonder whether I am lying to you, because you LL be the one person I can T. I took a breath. 2 weeks ago, I woke up able to see lies. Actually see them. When a person tells a lie, the truth writes itself in red under their face, and only I can read it. That S how I knew about the emissions liability and the forgeries and Brendan S leverage. I VE spent 2 weeks reading the truth off the chin of every liar in this company. Her eyes went wide. Which means, I said quietly, I know what you really felt every single time you were cold to me this week. I read it. Every this marriage is over. Every I don T want you here. Every sign the papers and leave. I watched the red underneath it say the opposite. In the boardroom 2 weeks ago, when you looked me in the eye and told me you D never loved me, and I should be grateful you let me think otherwise. My own voice broke finally after 2 weeks of holding it. The red under your chin said, I have never loved anyone the way I love you, and I am about to lose you to save you. I V known since the first morning. I V known this whole time that you loved me. That S why I could stand being pushed away. That S why I could let you be cruel. Because I could see under every knife you threw that you were throwing it to keep me safe. She made a sound like the breaking of something that had been frozen too long. So, no. I said it wasn't T the job. And you don T have to take my word for it. Take your own. Say something false to me right now. Test it. Lie to me. Era, and watch me know. And Era Thorne looked at me, tears running down her carved winter face, and she said in a wrecked and disbelieving whisper, I don T love you. I never did. I want you to leave. And I looked at the red letters blooming under her chin. I love you. I love you. Don T you dare leave. Don T you ever leave. And I smiled. And I reached up and wiped a tear off her cheek with my thumb. And I said, liar. And she broke. She broke the way a river breaks in spring. All at once, 3 years of ice going out in a single roaring instant. And she grabbed the front of my cheap jacket with both hands and pulled me in. And for the first time since a dying man had assigned me to guard his daughter, I got to stop guarding her and simply hold her. And she cried into my collar and laughed at the same time and hit my chest once hard for the 3 years and then just held on. You knew, she kept saying. You knew the whole time. I was trying so hard to save you, and you knew. You impossible you. Why didn't T you just tell me? Because you backslash D have pushed me out to protect me. I murmured into her hair. You still would have. It backslash S the most infuriating thing about you, and I love it more than I can say. I backslash am going to lie to you constantly now, she said, wet and fierce against my neck. Every day, just to watch you catch it under her chin in red, warm and true and unhidden and forever. Because it means every day for the rest of my life. I backslash LL have proof in a color only you can see of exactly how much I love you, and neither of us will ever have to wonder again. Good, I said. I backslash am counting on it. And behind us, from the far end of the executive floor, an ancient dry voice called out. Edgar, who had absolutely not left, who had wheeled himself into the shadows to watch the whole thing with the shameless delight of a man who backslash D waited 30 years for a happy ending in this family, and wasn't backslash T about to miss it. It backslash S about time, Robert. Wherever you are, you old thief. You were right. And I backslash am going to spend the rest of my short life reminding everyone that I was there when it landed. And laughed against me. Really laughed, the sound of it echoing off the glass. And I held my wife in the ruins of a war we backslash D won, in the company her father built and we backslash D saved. And I thought, the red letters showed me every lie in the world. But the only truth that ever mattered, I backslash D have known without them. 6 months later, Thorn Global posted the best quarter in its 40-year history. Era ran it. She had always been the one to run it. She just spent 3 years running it with one hand tied behind her back and a jackal backslash S fist around her throat. And now, unleashed, she was terrifying in the way that only a brilliant person finally allowed to be brilliant can be terrifying. The Meridian people slunk off to gut some other company. The emissions liability trap I backslash D spotted at the Owens dinner became, once we controlled the narrative, the single best piece of leverage the company owned. Victor Owens renewed his terminals with us for 15 years and told anyone who backslash D listened that the Thorn Boy had saved him $400 million over dinner and never once raised his voice. Edwin Hawkins got his name back, and his safe, I kept my word. I put the forged embezzlement file in his hands myself, and he drove home and burned it in his own fireplace and called me afterward. And for the first time since I backslash D met him, there was not one red letter under a single word he said. Because a man with nothing left to be afraid of has nothing left to lie about. He backslash S still our CFO. He backslash S very good at it. He was always very good at it. He was just never until now allowed to be honest and employed at the same time. Lana went back to school, business school of all things. The girl who backslash D spent 3 years as a beautiful bored ghost decided she wanted to actually understand the empire she backslash D been born into. And every so often she calls me with a question about a term sheet. And she still can backslash T quite believe that the houseboy she mocked is the person she trusts most in the family. And neither honestly can I. Arthur is awaiting trial. There will be many trials. Edgar sees to it personally. The old man got out of his wheelchair the day after the boardroom and hasn't backslash T sat back down since. And he tells me at least once a week that I gave him 10 more years of life by giving him something to do. And I believe him because in 6 months I have never once seen a red letter under anything Edgar Thorne says. He simply refuses to lie. It backslash S the most powerful thing about him. It was always the most powerful thing about him. An Era lies to me every single day. It backslash S become the private language of our marriage. The thing that backslash S just ours. I made you breakfast. She backslash LL say when she hasn't backslash T. And I backslash LL look at the red under her chin that says, I want you to make it and eat it with me because I like the mornings we backslash re both slow. And I backslash LL say, liar, and make the eggs. And it backslash S the closest thing to a love letter either of us knows how to write. She tests me constantly, delightedly, crewy. And every time I catch her, the red says the same thing underneath. Proof in a color only I can see. Renewed every morning. That the coldest woman in the world thawed for exactly one person and intends to keep thawing for him until they backslash re both old. I never did find out where the power came from. I stopped expecting to. I woke up one gray Tuesday, and the world had subtitles, and it gave me back my wife and my father-in-law /s good name, and a life I stopped believing I was allowed to have. And I decided that some gifts you accept without an invoice. I told myself the mystery was over. I was wrong about that. It was 6 months to the day after the boardroom at a charity dinner was hosting that I met the man who taught me the mystery was just beginning. He introduced himself as Silas Croft, an acquisition specialist newly arrived in the city, and he was charming in the specific frictionless way that made the back of my neck prickle before I could say why. He shook my hand. He smiled. He said, "Caleb Stone, or should I say Orion, I admired your work for years. The real work, the quiet work. It's an honor to finally meet the man behind the name." And I smiled back, and I looked out of 6 months of habit at the space beneath his chin, waiting to read the truth under whatever polished thing he say next. "I have to confess," Silas Croft said, holding my gaze. "I am not really here for the charity. I am here for your wife /s company. I intend to take it, and I thought it only sporting to tell you that to your face right at the start." His smile widened. "Since we both know you have a certain advantage when it comes to knowing when a man is lying." The champagne turned to ice in my hand. "Because he said it, I intend to take it. I am not here for the charity." A dozen sentences that should have bled red the instant they left his mouth. And beneath Silas Croft /s chin, under every single word, there had been nothing. Nothing at all. Not the honest nothing of Edgar, the old man too iron to lie. Something else. Something worse. A smooth, deliberate, engineered nothing. The blank of a man who was lying to my face on purpose and had made absolutely certain the red would never come. "You wondering why nothing turned red," Silas said softly, watching the understanding arrive in my eyes with the satisfaction of a man who planned this exact moment. "You thought you were the only one. That the thing about a gift like ours, Caleb. Nobody ever tells you there were others. Nobody tells you it can be taken from you." He set down his glass and buttoned his jacket and leaned in close enough that that the man who gave it to you can give it to someone else. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. Give my regards to Era, and do start watching the red a little more carefully from now on." He smiled, one final frictionless smile. "While you still can." He walked away into the crowd, and I stood there in the warm gold light of my wife's charity dinner, with a glass going cold in my hand, and my heart hammering against my ribs. And for the first time since a gray Tuesday 6 months before, I looked out at a room full of people, and understood that the game I thought I'd won had only ever been the first round. My name is Caleb Stone. I gave up everything to guard a woman I came to love, and a strange red gift gave me the power to protect her. And I had just learned that somewhere out there was a man who could lie to me in a color I couldn't see, who wanted everything we'd fought for, and who knew exactly where my gift came from and exactly how to take it away. The subtitles had shown me every lie in the world. And the most dangerous one I was beginning to understand was the one I'd told myself, that it was over. It wasn't over. It was just getting started. I told everything that night that was new. Telling her everything, and I was still learning how to do it after 3 years of a marriage built on a promise of silence. But I had decided in the gold light of that charity dinner that whatever Silas Croft was, we were going to face it as two people and not as a guardian and a secret. So I told her about Croft, about the smooth engineered nothing under his chin, about the impossible fact of a man lying to my face in a color I couldn't read. She listened the way she did everything now that the ice was gone, completely fiercely. Her whole formidable mind turned on the problem. And when I finished, she didn't waste a second on fear. "All right," my wife said, pulling her hair back. And the CEO, who had just posted the best quarter in company history, came fully online in her eyes. "So, there's another one." Pulling her hair back. And the CEO, who had just posted the best quarter in company history, came fully online in her eyes. "So, they're another one. And he wants the company, and he knows what you can do, and he's built himself a way around it." Then we stop treating your gift like the whole board and start treating it like one very good piece. We win with the rest of the pieces, too. We always did. You beat Arthur with recordings and forensics and a former judge, not with magic. The red just tells you where to point. So we point. God, I loved her. There's something else, I said. He said the gift can be taken. He said the man who gave it to me could give it to someone else. Era, I never told you how I got it because I don't know. I woke up with it. One gray Tuesday, no warning. But that's not quite true. And I've been not thinking about the not quite true part for 6 months. She went still. What part? I made myself remember. The night before the red letters came, I'd been up late, unable to sleep, the same insomnia Sophia had read on my face that first morning. And somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd gone down to the kitchen for water. And there had been a man in the garden just standing there past the glass in the dark in the rain, not moving. I'd assumed I imagined him. I'd been exhausted, half dreaming, and when I looked again, he was gone. But now, 6 months later, sitting across from my wife with a rival's impossible blankness burned into my memory. I remembered one more detail, the detail I'd filed away and refused to open. The man in the garden had been looking directly at me, and he had been smiling, and he had raised one hand, not a wave, more like a benediction, more like a man setting something down, and mouthed 2 words through the glass and the rain that I had told myself for 6 months I had not seen. Your turn. Your turn, I repeated to now, and the words felt like cold water down my spine. He said, your turn. And the next morning the whole world turned red. Era's hand found mine across the table. Then Silas Croft isn't the first person you have to find, she said quietly. The man in the garden is because whoever hands out a gift like this, a gift that just happens to arrive the exact morning you needed it to save this family, her gray eyes sharpened. That's not a coincidence, Caleb. That's a player. That's someone who wanted you to win in that boardroom. And now 6 months later, someone's arrived who wants us to lose and who also has the gift. And I refuse to believe both of those things fell out of the sky in the same year. She was right. Of course, she was right. I had spent 6 months treating the power as a windfall, a lottery ticket, a thing to be accepted without an invoice. And Silas Croft had walked into a charity dinner and reminded me of the first rule of the only world I'd ever really understood. The rule I'd somehow let myself forget in the warmth of finally being happy. Nobody gives you something for nothing. Not banks, not families, not strange men in the rain. Everything is a position in someone else's trade. The question was never why did I get this gift? The question was, what am I being set up to do with it? And who exactly is on the other side of the table? The next morning I woke early and I lay in the gray light with Era asleep against my shoulder. Really asleep, the loose, unguarded sleep of a woman who no longer had to keep her spine straight even in her dreams. And I began for the second time in my life to do the thing I had once been the best in the world at. I began to hunt. Silas Croft had no history. I knew what that meant now. I'd had no history either once. His acquisitions firm was 3 months old and funded through a chain of shells even more elegant than Arthur's. And I recognized the elegance, recognized the hand, the way you recognize a rival Granum's opening, and it frightened me because it was better than mine. Within a week, I established 4 things. Croft had targeted Thorn Global specifically, not opportunistically. He had begun buying our stock carefully, patiently, the way I had, which meant he knew I'd see a clumsy raid coming, and had decided to beat me at my own quiet game. He had already made contact with 2 of our board members. And when I sat across from those board members and asked them careful questions, their lies about it turned red under their chins as easily as anyone's, which told me something crucial. Croft's immunity was his own. He could keep the red from himself, but he couldn't give that shield to the people who worked for him. His agents still bled truth. That was a crack. Small, but a crack. And I had brought down an empire through a smaller one. And the fourth thing I found at the bottom of a due diligence file, so buried I almost missed it. A single incorporation document from 4 years ago, before Croft, before the shells, a name he'd used and discarded like I discarded mine, and attached to it as the registered witness, notarized and time-stamped, and absolutely real, was a signature I had spent 6 months trying not to think about. It was the same handwriting the man in the garden had used to mouth 2 words through the rain. I couldn't have known that. You can't read handwriting off a memory of moving lips. And yet, the moment I saw it, some animal certainty in me went cold and sure. The man who gave me the gift and the man now trying to destroy us were not strangers. They were connected. This had always been a game between 2 players, and I had never been one of them. I had been a piece the man in the garden had placed on the board 6 months ago with 2 words and a benediction, and a piece Silas Croft had just announced at a charity dinner that he intended to take. I looked at that signature for a long, long time. Then I closed the file, and I went to find my wife. Because there was one more rule from the old world that I had relearned in the gold light of that dinner, the most important one, the one that had cost me 3 years to understand the first time. You do not survive a game between titans by being the strongest piece. You survive it by refusing absolutely and to the last to keep playing the role the titans assigned you. The man in the garden had made me a piece. Silas Croft had come to collect me, and somewhere between the 2 of them, they had made the same mistake that Arthur made and Brendan made, and every powerful person who had ever looked at me had made for 3 long years. They had decided they knew exactly what I was. They were about to find out, both of them, the same thing the Thorne family learned in a boardroom on the 40th floor, that the most dangerous man in any room is the one everybody else has already finished underestimating. Silas Croft made his first real move on a Wednesday, and it was elegant, and it nearly worked. He didn't come at me. He came at Laura, not at her company, at her. At the one seam in her armor I'd spent 6 months helping her stitch closed. A story appeared in a business tabloid source to people familiar with the matter, suggesting that Thorne Global's miraculous turnaround had been built on insider trading by an anonymous investor known only as Orion, and that the CEO's own husband was that investor, and that regulators were circling. It was a beautiful lie. It was shaped exactly like the truth. I was Orion. I had bought the stock. And a lie shaped like the truth is the hardest thing in the world to kill. By noon, the share price wobbled. By 2 o'clock, 3 board members had called an emergency meeting, and I understood, watching it unfold, that Croft had studied me the way I'd studied Arthur. He knew my history was a ghost. Knew that if anyone pulled the thread of who is Orion, really, the whole quiet architecture of my life could unravel, and he decided to pull it in public where I couldn't reach him. But he'd made the same mistake all of them made. He'd only protected himself. So I didn't chase the story. I chased the source. I sat down one by one with the 3 board members who'd called the meeting, and I asked them a single mild question. Who told you about the Orion story before it broke? And I watched the red bleed out from under their chins because Croft's shield didn't extend to them. And by the end of the afternoon, I had a name. A mid-level Thorne communications officer named Delgado. No relation to Brendan, just the universe's sense of humor, who had been approached 2 weeks earlier by a consultant named Croft and paid to see the story from the inside. The man confessed the instant I laid the timeline in front of him. Frightened men always do, and I have never in my life met one I couldn't read. I had the leak, the payment, and the tie to Croft in a single day. And Silas Croft, who had lit the fuse from a distance so it could never be traced back to him, discovered the next morning that it had been traced back to him anyway, publicly, completely, because he'd forgotten that a man who can't lie to me is worthless as a lieutenant, and every soldier he'd ever hire would hand me his commander the moment I asked. The story died, the stock recovered, and that evening, my phone rang from a number with no history, and I answered it. And Silas Croft's smooth voice said without preamble, "That was fast. I'm impressed. I shouldn't be. I designed the test to be hard, but I am." "It wasn't a test," I said. "It was your first move, and you lost it. It was absolutely a test, Caleb, and you passed it, which is unfortunate for you because now I know exactly how good you are, and I can stop being polite." A pause and something amused and ancient crept into his voice. "You found the Delgado leak in a day because my people bleed red for you, and I don't. You think that's my weakness? It's actually the most important thing I'll ever teach you. And I'm going to teach it to you for free as a professional courtesy, because I respect a man who flips a board." He let the silence stretch. "Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you can read every liar on earth except me. It isn't that I'm hiding the red, Caleb. It's that the man in your garden didn't give me the same gift he gave you. He gave me the other half of it. You see everyone's lies. The smile was audible, get to choose which of mine you'll ever see. He split it in two, and he handed one half to a houseboy and one half to me. And then he sat back to watch which of us would figure out first that the gift was never a gift. It was a leash. And there's exactly one person on earth who holds the other end of both our leashes. And sooner or later, Caleb, you and I are going to stop fighting each other over a shipping company and start asking the only question that actually matters. His voice dropped, which is what he wants and what happens to both of us on the day we stop being useful to him. Give my regards to Alara. We'll speak again soon, and do sleep with the garden lights on. The line went dead, and I stood in the dark of my study with the phone cooling against my ear, and for the first time I understood the true shape of the board I was standing on. Not a war between me and Silas Croft, but a war between the man in the garden and everyone he'd ever handed a piece of his terrible gift. A war I'd been drafted into 6 months before I even knew it existed. Croft was right about one thing. The gift was a leash. I'd felt it tighten the moment he said it. But Croft had made the same mistake as all of them right there at the end in the one sentence that mattered, because he told me we were the same. 2 pieces on the same board, 2 men on the same leash. And I have never, not once in my life, been content to stay the piece that a Titan placed. Arthur placed me, and I broke him. Robert placed me, and I outgrew even his plan. The man in the garden had placed me too, and one day I promised the dark I was going to find him, and I was going to look at the space beneath his chin, and I was going to learn whether the man who gave out gifts like leashes could lie to the piece he'd made to read them. But first there was a company to protect, and a wife to build a life with, and a smooth, impossible man circling both, and a long war ahead of me now with 2 fronts instead of one. Good. I'd spent 3 years bored out of my mind, pretending to be furniture. I was done being bored. My name is Caleb Stone. Every lie in the world turns red before my eyes, except his. And I was going to find the man in the garden, and I was going to learn the truth about the gift. And I was going to walk into whatever game these 2 titans thought they were playing over the heads of everyone I loved. And I was going to flip the board. But that's the next story. This one ends where it should, with my wife asleep and unguarded in the morning light, with a dead man's name cleared and his company safe, with a lonely girl back in school and an honest man still employed and an old Titan back on his feet, and with me, the houseboy, the nobody, the piece nobody bothered to watch, sitting in the gray dawn, sharpening myself for the war to come and smiling. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what I couldn't see coming. Let them think they know what I am.